Men rising up to end the silence around us about the chains that bind us, to dispel the darkness of illusion with luminous spiritual technologies, to finally become the hero within us all. This is Arise the Honest Man's podcast. As I say every single week, my name is Karuna Avatar Das, and with me is my beloved co-host, Jai Jagannath Prabhu. And we have our fantastic, exuberant, authentic, unapologetic, inimitable, just wonderful Nakul with us again. We're so excited to have you back for this second installment of our very lively conversation last week. And you know what, Nakul? I was thinking that I just want to give this intro of yours again just because it's so epic and it's so much fun. And I just love saying it, you know?
Sure. I love hearing it, so yeah.
It's like hearing it, yeah, I am epic. Okay, here it goes. As one of the most captivating and passionate trainers and speakers on the subject of sex, Nakul's dynamic energy can be felt throughout the entire audience, inspiring both tears and laughter. He fuses stories on sex, spirituality, and modern problems into profound lessons on faith and freedom. He is the general of the Semen Retention Army, creator of the Become a Sexual Alchemist training program, and sex guru for the modern man. Please welcome Nakul Das.
I love it. Like I said, mentioned last time, it was awesome to hear it the first time. It's just as awesome to hear it the second time.
I think so, Karuna, I like to start with that first statement that you mentioned in our pre-show preparation. It's not a preparation, but our pre-show exchange. If you can open out, like, what is the point of these sorts of conversations in public spaces? We're putting out this questionnaire that has gotten really positive response. Actually, I actually was just in New Vrindavan, and I met people who did the questionnaire in New Vrindavan, like these random guys that it's like they watched the show, they did the questionnaire, and they were kind of giving their feedback on it. So it's getting good momentum. But the questions are really, they're kind of personal. They're very specific. A little uncomfortable, obviously. So people may be wondering, what are we getting at with all these questionnaires and these sorts of conversations in public spaces? And I think you articulated it very well in our just pre-show exchange. And I like to start there, if that would be cool.
Yes, absolutely. It may be somewhat unclear. Considering the fact that what we're dealing with here, the subject matter of sex, I'm just hearing a little bit of an echo. I'm not sure exactly where that may be coming from. Prabhu's, just check for a sec. Okay, let me try again. Okay, we're dealing with the subject matter of sex. Okay, I'm not hearing it. Fantastic. So this is a big deal. And it's such a big deal because it's kind of the first time.
The big and hard problem.
I didn't even start that, so that wasn't me. Just on the record.
Oh my god! Yeah, touche, bro. So yeah, it's kind of a big deal because, to my knowledge, this is really the first time that that devotees in our society, since its kind of inception, have initiated such an open public conversation about sex and about sex in the KC society and where we're really at, right? So and it is known, sex is known to be, according to our Siddhanta, according to the truth of our philosophy, it is known to be the fundamental binding principle in the material world. It's the highest pleasure. It's the thing that really keeps us here, right? Because it's the one thing that we understand from our philosophy. The soul is qualitatively the same, regardless of whatever body one may take, right? And there are so many different subjective experiences in different bodies. But the one thing that remains consistent, no matter what body you have, is sex. Sex is there. So it's really the thing that we come back for. And being, such a big deal, and being the thing that, makes us, that keeps us coming back and essentially gets us to repeat the cycle of samsara, in the kind of like general attitude in our society is like, stay away. It's like, regarded as being this most horrific, evil, dirty, terrible thing, which then essentially the consequence of that is that there is an immense amount of guilt and shame which is generated from that belief, and and so therefore that is why there is such a widespread sexual malaise in our society of devotees. Now, that is the kind of the beginning of the whole thing. But most of us listening to this show, I imagine, and such a large part of our worldwide Krishna conscious society are people that have been brought up in the Western world. And what is happening in the Western world? It's just like rampant with sexual imagery everywhere. We're basically just like, I mean, at least our sort of younger generation, we're just bathed in sex practically from such a young age, whether that's through advertising, whether it's through pornography, whatever it may be. It's just like, God, it's penetrated deep, into our consciousness.
Interesting choice of words. Okay, carry on.
Very intentional, very intentional. So it's really a big deal for us, and then this like complete abstinence, like sex is the is like the antichrist of enlightenment practically. That creates like a huge schism in the consciousness of the typical Western devotee. So the fact of the matter is that our ideal standard, as it is espoused by Srila Prabhupada and maintained by our philosophy and culture within our Krishna conscious society, is 50 rounds for procreation, right? Like that is the standard that is expected to be maintained. That is the ideal standard. But how many people actually manage to do that? And we hypothesize that the amount of people that actually manage to do that is very small, very small. So for the rest of us, that may not be where we're at. That may not be the level that we're on. And the fact of the matter is, and this I'm now coming to like my final statement, is the purpose of these conversations, the purpose of the research that we're conducting through the questionnaire, the purpose of this whole endeavor, firstly, to create dialogue about it, to make it okay for people to talk about it, since it's on everyone's minds, in everyone's hearts, in everyone's hormones. So we're trying to make it okay to talk about it in the first place. And then secondly, the core purpose really is to honestly admit where we are at and to be there shamelessly, right? And to be there wherever you are right now in the most wholesome, conscious way that you possibly can. That is the core purpose. So that's essentially what I would like to achieve with this endeavor. I think that we all agree on that kind of aim, and yeah. So that's really what's motivating this whole thing. In case anyone was wondering.
Nice. I want to, not cool. So I want to springboard from here because first of all, our episode last week, as I was mentioning, got amazing feedback. I got just incredible feedback. Half of my friends were telling me that when they saw the blurb for the episode, they were like extremely skeptical.
Right.
And then after watching the episode, they were like, I'm a fan. And which for my friends is a lot, because they're like very critical thinkers.
Sure.
And so for them to say that was like definitely a compliment.
You.
Definitely a compliment.
Thank you.
And just speaking to what Corona Avatar just said, that to honestly admit where we're at and being there shamelessly without diminishing the actual ideals of Krishna consciousness. That was one of the things that really came through in our episode last week with you. People felt like you were just who you were without any pretense, and that you didn't feel any embarrassment about it. You didn't feel any shame. You were like very open talking about. So I kind of want to talk about that a little bit and how you got there. Specifically, as I mentioned to you right in the pre-show, was that you don't strike me exactly as an ISKCON devotee. Even though your guru isn't a prominent leader in ISKCON, Bhakti Mark Swami, you mentioned last week. So like nothing about you strikes me as ISKCON. And that's not a negative thing, or necessarily a positive thing, but what I appreciate about it is that you're kind of like your own person. And you're not so integrated into the society. So it doesn't seem like you've inherited some of the shame that came with a lot of us when we kind of integrated into the society and accepted our identity as an ISKCON devotee or a Hare Krishna in the ISKCON movement. Like that comes with a certain level of inheritance, which you don't seem to have at all. So I guess my first question is, what is your relationship to ISKCON? And yeah, how do you kind of keep your unique sort of autonomous position whilst also, and to some degree, identifying as a member of the Hare Krishna movement? I guess those are my first questions for you.
Sure. I think the answer to that really lives in the way that I came to Krishna consciousness. I didn't come through Krishna consciousness through nobody brought me to a kirtan. I didn't even know what kirtan was. I was literally in an ISKCON temple and didn't know what ISKCON was. Right. I had no idea what was going on. And I was just like, this is awesome. And so I've always been what I'll call a spiritual explorer, just to give some terminology. I don't really, I love spirituality. I love discussing life. I'm in love with life. And I think that the way that my mind has always been, ever since, I can remember, is very open to new things. It's like I came for the experience, it's like I came to this amusement park and I'm gonna have fun, right? Like I see people come to the amusement park and they're like, why am I in the amusement park, right? I was like, look, if you're in jail, you might as well enjoy jail and until you get out, right? Like, type of thing. If you're in the amusement park, if you think I'm in this material world, so I'm going to suffer my way through it, which we know is part of life, but we have a choice in that suffering. So anyways, my point is that I didn't come to ISKCON through devotees. I came to ISKCON because I went to a Canadian shaman who sent a prayer of Christ over me. I had this tremendous experience where I never read the Gita, but I already realized I'm not my body and mind through this experience.
Sure.
The Gita gave me language to what I had experienced. That's what the Gita came in for me. And it was Srila Prabhupada's Gita. And I'm happy with Srila Prabhupada's Gita because not only did he give me some insight to what had happened to me, but then he gave me this whole other, this whole other dimension and existence that I didn't know existed. And so I read the Gita by myself. I listened to the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra on YouTube for a good 6-8 months. Then I went to Toronto and I looked up Hare Krishna online and there was a temple. There was the ISKCON temple. So I went and the first thing I signed up for was Bhakti Sastri. Right? I just said, look, I'm here. I read the Gita. I want to know more about the Gita. And so they signed me up to Bhakti Sastri. And so I go to Bhakti Sastri, right? And you have to know, right? I have no idea anything that's going on, right? I sit there and this guy, and I can't remember his name. I can see his face, but he's from India. And he's giving the teacher, he can barely speak English. And, he's got the bald head with the Sika. He's got the dhoti, the whole thing. And so far, I've only ever seen this stuff on YouTube, right? So I'm like, whoa, this is a real yogi. This guy's from India. He's got to be real. He's legit. He's legit, right? Right. So anyways, I go to this Bhakti Sastri class, and they're giving lessons on the Gita. And that's how I start. And then someone said to me, oh, do you have Sunday? Have you come to Sunday feast? No, I don't know what that is. Yeah, come stay, because it was on a Sunday. They're like, just stay another hour and this place is going to pack out. And I was like, okay, cool. So I stayed and I sat in the back and just enjoyed the whole process. Had no idea what was going on. Some guy was like, you need to dance. I was like, okay. And so we're like, ah. So I'm like, and now you got to remember, I grew up in Catholic, right? So where it's like very somber, like, oh, right. You think Hare Krishnas are guilty. Check out the Catholic community, man. Right. It's like, and so anyways, so I really loved it. And that was cool. And I just kept going back, and I really much just hung out by myself for a while and just hung out. And then I met Maharaj, and then Maharaj, brought me to New Vrindavan, and we did some plays and such, and, and introduced me to the principles and all that stuff. And then I moved back out to St. John, where there's no real devotee association or anything. It's very, very tiny communities, like 20 of us scattered around the province. And so we got some stuff. So we've pioneered some stuff here. We did the first Rath Yatra in Atlantic Canada in history, just all over the weekend. And we had this beautiful cart, and oh my gosh, it was so great. We were about 30, 40 people, and, we just figured it out. Right. And so I also started reading. I got intrigued about Srila Prabhupada, and I started reading about the early days. I was really inspired by the early devotees. And I saw a disconnect between the early devotees and what I was seeing within ISKCON. And so, and even the spirit of Maharaj and the overall spirit. I really understood that when I went to New Vrindavan, and I had people come up to me that I don't know, telling me about their sexual orientation or telling me about these things. Just for whatever reason, they felt comfortable, because they know that I don't judge. I don't care what you do, because I believe in free will and choice. Okay, so here's why I don't seem like an ISKCON devotee. The highest principle is to get out of the material world, where I'm still enjoying the amusement park, right? That's all it is, and I'm okay with that. I struggled because I taught myself, well, this is the highest principle, blah 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 blah. But over time, I found for myself, and I'm not telling anybody to follow me or, blah, blah, blah. I just found for myself that I was like, truthfully, if I have to be dead honest with myself, no, I'm not done here. I still want to have a successful business in my life. I still want to have a great relationship, and I want to be with my wife physically. I want to, I want to participate in the world. And I know that it comes with all its suffering and everything like that, but I'm okay with that. Like, I'm okay with that. It's fine. And I find that the reason why devotees aren't themselves is because they care too much what other people think. And here's the deal. If you care so much what other people think, you'll never experience freedom. What does Srila Prabhupada tell us? Everybody wants freedom. Yes, and we mistake freedom to be here in the sense gratification. I get it, right? But the point is you have freedom. You have a choice of who you need to be, who you want to be. Krishna gave you that blessing. That is the individual. That's what makes us not Mayavadi. If everybody's the same, everybody's actually Mayavadi claiming to be Vaishnava. But you don't respect individualism, so you're Mayavadi. And that, to me, pissed me off. And I was like, get out.
I could hear it. I could hear the passion.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Like I was like, what are you doing? You're ex-naying the principle that makes us unique.
Yeah, bro.
What makes us unique and what makes us different than the whole New Age and every other form of spirituality out there is the individual principle. And it's funny, it's the individual principle that we as a society also misunderstand. And I'm just an exaggeration of that misunderstanding. I'm literally here just to be like, oh yeah, look how individual I am, right? just to show you that no, you're like you're missing half of the equation still. My perspective, of course.
You're hearing you speak, I'm reminded of the Bhagavatam verse, this verse that speaks about the qualifications of a disciple and a guru. And it's a famous verse, Tasma Gurum Prapadyeta Jignasu Shreya Uttama. So in this verse, it says, therefore, accept a guru, take shelter of a guru, and inquire about the highest shreyas, the highest potential of the living entity. And this word tasma in the verse says that tasma means therefore. So it means therefore, after you've like kind of exhausted your celestial and earthly attempts for enjoyment, therefore, after that, go and take shelter of the guru, because now you're kind of like lost because the thing that you were living for is no longer there. Therefore, go to the guru and inquire about what is the highest potential as a living entity. So anyway, I'm reminded of that because basically the verse is saying not everyone needs to go to a guru necessarily unless they've kind of appreciated, like, this thing is not where it's at. And if you haven't, I think what you're saying, and it speaks to a lot of our experiences, is that a lot of us haven't really deeply appreciated that. We know that. We haven't really deeply appreciated it, but we already got initiated. So we've already kind of like accepted a guru without maybe fully appreciating it. So then we this like pinching starts pulling us apart where like, yeah, I'm still interested in enjoying the amusement part. Or frankly speaking, not only am I interested, I am enjoying the amusement part, but now I'm like super duper guilty about it because I took initiation and I'm supposed to be like this, I'm supposed to be like that, and I'm not. And so I'm like, it's like it starts just like ripping apart at like even like mental health, because some of the boys I talked to, even over the weekend, some of the boys I was talking to, like your mental health just starts to really become compromised. Whereas it seems like with you kind of just like, this is where I'm at. I understand that this is going to come with XYZ sort of issues, but that's the choice that I want to make.
I guess I've always been in trouble. So I'm like, I get trouble's just part of it. Like, no matter what I do, like there's some trouble there. That's the material world, right?
Right.
Yeah. What this is really bringing up for me right now is just like, we find ourselves like the Krishna consciousness movement is a society. What does that word mean? It means that we're a social structure. And the fact of the matter is that in any social structure, there are certain designations that give one status, right? And if you haven't accepted a guru and gotten initiated and all of that, then it's kind of like people don't really take you that seriously. It's like, Bhakta Kroniya, like, who am I? But so the fact is that there's also just a lot of social pressure for people to approach a spiritual master, in the Bhakti yoga tradition, love of God, like the ultimate ideal of all existence, for like social reasons.
Yeah,
that's like weird.
See, I never grew up in ISKCON. I don't.
Yeah.
I hang out with anybody. I love people, man. I belong to the part and parcel God body, right? And that means I belong to everybody. And so for me, I haven't bought in to the I only have to associate and interact and be with ISKCON because I just don't want to. Like I'm like trying to think of some intellectual reason other than I don't want to. I just don't want to. I like my neighbor who, like, I usually see where I live. My neighbors, when I get up in the morning, I hear like country. I'm in St. John, New Brunswick, Canada. Okay. On the weekend, this place is full of bonfires and people drinking beers and blah, 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 blah. And they've seen us do Hare Krishna kirtans here and stuff. Nobody cares. Like it's all good. The thing is, what we do is we end up segregating ourselves from the rest of everybody because of the ideals we hold. But then we're dishonest. Many of us are dishonest with ourselves because you're like, yeah, you hold this great ideal, but you don't live that ideal. Like, not fully, not in the way, but that's where the disconnect is. So it's one thing to look up to people. Like Srila Prabhupada said, never imitate the great devotees, right? Get inspired by them, but don't imitate them. I'm inspired by Bhakti-Marg Swami, but I am not Bhakti-Marg Swami. I am inspired by Srila Prabhupada, by Radhanath. You know who I'll get let's since we're doing ISKCON gossip, right? Let's do Radhanath Swami versus Bhakti Vikasi Swami. Okay, I like them both. Because I actually like the conservatism of what's his name? Bhakti. Am I saying it right?
Yeah,
Bhakti Vikash.
Yeah. Thank you, Bhakti Vikash Swami. Right, I've listened to tons of his lectures, and I was like, "Oh man, this guy! What is this guy?" And he's right. I appreciate that about him. I appreciate that he's like, "No, you wear the dhoti. You don't eat a meal a day. Like this is Sastra says this, and we're going back to Godhead, and what y'all doing is not Sastra." But I appreciate that about him. I am never going to follow him, clearly, right? But I appreciate him. Then I listen to Radhanath Swami, and he's got a whole different kind of vibe going on, right? He's got a whole different mood. And I appreciate his mood too, because his mood is so warm and compassionate and sweet, and it's so inclusive, and and it speaks to so many different people on so many different levels. Now, doesn't Sastra tell us that there are going to be like people like that? There's going to be all different types of ways to communicate this energy. Krishna's all attractive, so he's going to empower all kinds of different souls to attract all different people at all different levels. So when I see a Radhanath Swami and Bhakti Vikas Swami, and they can't get along, and I think that's more one-sided than the other from my understanding, but I'm not sure, right? I don't want to go there. The point is that if they can't get along, if they can't agree with it, then imagine the rest of us who are just learning, so what standard do we hold for ourselves? And my question always has been, why don't we have an event where we put these guys together and we say, hey, let's hash this out. Let's talk about it, man. Like, why you tell them, isn't that our Vedic culture anyways, right? Isn't that what Lord Chaitanya did, right? Boom, come on, let's talk it out. Let's do it. And I find that we don't tend to do that. We tend to just stick with the people that totally see everything our way and hide under the devotee association umbrella. No, that's just comfortable umbrella. You're under the umbrella that everybody needs to think of you, think the world the same way as you, and see Krishna in the same exact way as you. Then how narrow-minded do we become as individuals and as a society? And to me, that's the bigger challenge we see. And I think that's why you see a lot of faction Hare Krishna groups happening. Why?
We'll probably see more too.
100% we'll see more. If the guys at the top can't sit down, why would the guys at the bottom sit down? It just makes no sense.
What I'm hearing from you is I'm just reflecting on what I think I'm hearing. A strategy for helping each other appreciate our individuality. Because
thank you. I love what you always, when you do the reflect back thing, it's always so concise and good. I love it.
And
I so appreciate it.
The other thing that I'm really appreciating hearing, and this is something I've contemplated about a lot, that you kind of identified yourself in the beginning of this episode as like a spiritual explorer, and you're open. And so you happen to be open in the Gita, and you learned from that. But your identity as a spiritual explorer is still prominent. Yeah. Whereas what happens to a lot of us, I could speak for myself, is that we kind of started off as spiritual explorers. We just wanted truth, and however the truth manifested to us, then we would embrace it. And then when the truth manifested to us as ISKCON, we went from spiritual explorer to a member of the institution. And so our identity as a spiritual explorer became kind of, in a sense, suppressed. And our sort of deep inquiry around our spirituality became a little bit less intense, as now I've discovered what my spirituality is, and I'm a member of the institution. And so we lack the sort of, which is counterintuitive, but we kind of become part of this homogeneous whole, and we lose sight of individuality, and we kind of hold one another to this sort of homogeneous cookie cutter mold, losing sight of individuality. And then when someone is outside of that, we're not able to appreciate or accommodate or facilitate. And so you're giving a strategy for like how we might deal with that individuality, keeping
100%.
our personal search or our personal quest for spiritual truth, personal and individual, like not losing that just because you happen to embrace truth in this particular form or that particular institution and so on. Anyway, these are just reflections that I'm hearing and appreciating.
Well, I said, like, I appreciate the when you do that, because it puts a new language, a new layer onto it, which helps us go a bit deeper. And absolutely. So first of all, my let's say gift in this world. Okay, so I obviously talk not humbly. right. Like, so let's just, let's just call that out, right? Because that's the first criticism. He's way too egotistical, right? Like he's way too into himself, which is both true and not true at the same time. In one hand, but in one hand, I'm also like, I know what I'm doing. Right. I know what I'm doing. Right. I know I'm challenging you. I know that when I say something, right, like last week when I was like, the flu, everybody's scared of the flu. Right. And I know what I'm doing. And I know how it's challenging you. And this is the way transformation actually happens, though. Transformation happens through challenge. So some character has to be the bad guy. Somebody has to come and say, hey, y'all are so sweet, man. Everybody's got nectar and nobody sleeps in this society. Everybody takes rest. Right? Nobody eats regular food. They all eat nectar. It's what? Yo, bro. Right. Like, and I get it. Srila Prabhupada gave us this language. I'm not Srila Prabhupada. I love Srila Prabhupada. I love my mom, but I'm not my mom. I don't sit around with my mom friends drinking, and having mom conversations, right? So it's kind of funny to me that I think that at some point or the other, we lose our own individuality, which again, I think is like what made me attracted to Krishna was the very fact that he said to me, you can still be you. And I was like, yes, I can still be me, and he can still be her, and she could be her. And I don't have to be in your business because you're you and you have an individual relationship with God. I'm me. I have an individual relationship with God. And ISKCON is a society in which we can meet other devotees, other people who have their individual, and learn all in the beautiful ways in which this wonderful forest operates. Like I was in the forest yesterday with my wife. We're into bushcrafting. I don't know if you know what that is.
No.
Like you go into the bush and no tent or nothing, and you build your own structure and you sleep. Everything is just like, we need a broom, we build the broom, right? Type of thing, right?
Wow.
And so we're out there and we're starting a site and we're ripping up the land and stuff. It's just a small area. And I'm looking around at the forest and I'm like, all individual trees, all different flavors, styles, one forest, but everybody's got their own move and dance going on. But what happens in societies when people aren't strong enough to set boundaries, there's deep self-image, self-value, self-esteem issues going on. And with low self-esteem, you just buy into anything. Right? When you got low self-esteem, anybody who gives you any sense of certainty, you're just going to buy into. And I'm not saying you don't have to buy into it, but I'm saying it's a
compelling argument, actually.
What is the motivation for you conforming? You call it surrender, I call it conform. Okay, what's the distinction? I mean, I think that's a whole conversation, because how do you know? How do you know if right now I'm surrendered or not? Because you may think from your perspective, wow, this guy is like so off the mark, right? He's so off the mark in what he's doing. How do you know?
We're getting a request. Say it again, please.
I can't remember what I said.
It almost has an amen feeling to it, like say it again, amen. But I'm hearing, and actually, I thought about this a lot too, because I noticed I joined when I was very young, 18, and I'm going to be real with you. I had a really good self-esteem because my mom ensured that I was basically puffed up to like the nth degree. And I'm not ashamed of it or anything, but I had like a very solid identity, and I was going to be the next Black Baryshnikov, famous world dancer. That was going to be me. And I had a very strong identity, and I was moving in a direction that seemed like I was going up my career. Like I was about to build a career around dance, and I was starting to meet with success. And I like dropped all of that to join the ashram. And was it a good decision or not? It was one of the best decisions I've ever made. But one thing that I noticed as I stayed in the ashram for 13 years, I saw that a lot of the young people who were coming didn't have any identity when they joined the Hare Krishna movement. And so then it was like, well, I'll surrender to this. But I'm like, Negro, ain't nothing to surrender. You don't got no identity yet, You don't know who you are. And of course, because it's Krishna consciousness, it's okay. Like in one sense, it doesn't matter if you have a identity or not. Take Krishna, and that's absolutely beautiful on the absolute platform. But then what I started to notice over the years is that a lot of these young people ended up leaving the ashram inevitably, and they didn't have any identity except for their identity of Krishna. But because that identity wasn't built on real surrender, in the sense that they had to let go of a nicely built identity to surrender to Krishna, it was built on just mush. And then they joined, and Krishna had to take that mush and kind of give it some little bit of shape. But then you leave the ashram, and then you're just mush again. And then they feel deeply resentful towards Krishna, towards the Krishna consciousness movement. And I've seen this like over and over and over again. So this idea that when you have a poor self-image or self-value or self-esteem, then you'll easily just conform to anyone who's selling you anything that's like stable and absolute. Okay. And it's something that I've noticed that it's because like youth are, you only appreciate this as you get older, but what's the saying? The youth is wasted on the young. That shit is real, dude. That is really real.
What does that mean? The youth is wasted on the young. What does that mean? I think
it can mean many things. In the context in which I'm using it now, it means that the youth don't really know anything. They're mush. Okay. And then their youthful energy.
But there's like an exuberance of youth. There's like a vigor and a vitality. But the thing is, you have no compass. Like you have no way to engage that.
Exactly. Yeah. So I could take advantage of that. And I think most organizations or advertisers do take advantage of that youthful exuberance, including our ISKCON. We also join the Brahmacharya ashram, join the Krishna consciousness movement, but then we end up leaving these sort of young people like deeply resentful. So this is part of a reflection, but just because that statement says say it again and the amen thing.
Well, what it is too, I think like I really like, it's such a great conversation. Like it's because I think this type of conversation is we're hitting at the fabric too of, okay, let's talk leadership. Let's just put it in the because this is where my mind is at. Let's put it in the context of just leadership. Okay. Any organization, how an organization is strong is by the strength of the individuals in that organization. Right. If you've got an organization where everybody's just secretly actually just so insecure and so like just wants to belong to somebody because their home life is crappy or blah, 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 then they're not there really to serve Krishna. They're not there to gain spiritual gain. They're there to have a social life. And that's fine. That's fine. It's okay that ISKCON or any society provides community for people. But what happens is when we only do that and we don't deal with then the real life issues, and that's all I'm trying to do with my work. I just want to really help people, which means, and does that mean everybody needs my help? No, but there are a certain group, a certain sect of guys, a lot more than want to admit it, but there's a certain sect of guys who deeply need what I have to offer, right? And it's okay. You don't have to be weird about it, because to me, it's like you have to be practical. You're taking a kid like me, I mentioned last time, my two idols growing up, 50 Cent and Tupac Shakur. All right. These are my deities. I had a massive life-size Tupac banner in my room. All right. Like, so
Tupac Murphy.
yeah, totally. Right. Yeah, totally. Worship of Tupac type thing. Right. So now you get, so now I come into Krishna consciousness. I'm totally digging it. I love it. I accept it as the highest truth. I'm like, it makes sense. It just makes sense. If you want to be all spiritual, you have to give up material. You can't play in both sense. So I was like, yes, I get it. But then as I'm going through it and as I'm trying and I'm giving it, I'm recognizing in myself, the reality is my desire in my heart, all right, is not pure. I'm not pure. I'm not. Like, that's the truth. Because I look at something and I still go, all right, yeah, you know what? I could probably
them ankles, bro. Them ankles.
Those ankles, yeah. Oh, yeah, you see those ankles coming out. You see those ankles coming out. You're like, I'm sorry, but my mind of years of MTV has so many images that like that. You show me an ankle, and I'm way beyond that ankle in seconds. You know, right? Like, right? And nobody wants to say that. So what do? We all sit around in temple, like you're not looking at that girl. Everybody feels you guys looking at each other, or all of the tension going on. But because it's so suppressed, it's so bad, it's made out to be so evil, that then people carry all kinds of guilts and shames. And these are very low energies, vibrations to be carrying within us. When you feel a disconnect, a rip within yourself, there's no chance that you're going to have higher spiritual experiences. Why do you think Srila Prabhupada was so loved? He first accepted you. He accepted you. I know, I've seen it. I'm
reminded of this story. You know the pig pen story? Indraduna Swami tells this story. Anyway, y'all can see it on the Prabhupada Memories. Indraduna Swami. And there was this guy in France that the devotees had nicknamed him Pigpen because he was so like lost on like drugs and, you know, completely dirty and disheveled. They wouldn't even let him come into the temple. And then one time Prabhupada came to France, he was on a morning walk, and Pigpen was like by the path on the morning walk, and he tried to touch Prabhupada's feet, and the devotees grabbed him and threw him into the bush. Don't touch him. You're contaminated. You're low, this, that. And then after going in the morning walk, they come back to the temple, and the temple doors open. And when they walk in the temple room, Pigpen is there in the middle of the temple room floor. And, you know, of course, devotees go, and they're immediately prepared to like throw him out. And this guy, he just runs over and grabs Prabhupada's feet. And Prabhupada just starts massaging his head and just saying, you know, it's all right, my boy. And this guy's like crying.
Yeah,
and I mean, when I first heard this, even now I'm getting a little bit teary, but Prabhupada was like rubbing his head and said, it's all right, my boy, it's all right, it's okay, for like 5 minutes. And then Prabhupada said, okay, I have to give class. He gave class. So after the class finished, the devotees were bewildered, like, well, what do we do? He got Prabhupada's mercy. We can't just dismiss him. So they like cleaned him up, shaved him up, and he started doing seva in the temple. A little bit later on, he wanted to go out on book distribution with the devotees. But they're like, Pigpen, you can't even articulate. He was like his speech had become so eroded from drug use that he couldn't really articulate clear sentences. So they're like, how are you going to distribute a book? So they said no. Anyway, they go to the car. He's already in the car with a bag of books. They're like, all right, you can come tag along and watch how we do it. Soon as they get to the location, Indraduna Maharaj explains how they kind of like wait for a while before distributing books, like kind of do some reading, prepare themselves. Soon as they got to the location, Pigpen comes out of the car and he distributes all the books before the devotees got out of the car. So they're like, Pigpen, you fool, did you just give away all the books? And then he pulls out like the money. So he did a donation for all the books. And they were like completely shocked. They said, what are you telling the people? And he was saying, the only thing he was telling people, he was showing the book and saying, Prabhupada saved me. That was the only thing he was telling. He was distributing all the books.
Oh, man.
I'm just augmenting that point, how you're saying Prabhupada he just accepted people. I mean, that's one example. There are tons of stories like this that people I'm sure are familiar with. But just a sense that first he kind of like loved you and accepted you for who you were, where you were. And then from there allows for a deeper transformation to take place. I just wanted to augment that point you were.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, it's an emotional story because I think in some way it's what makes spiritual life so beautiful is a genuine mercy and acceptance and understanding that we're all here in the material world. Nobody here is pure, right? We're all tainted in this world. You can't help it. It's part of this world. We all need mercy to go back to. Nobody's getting out here by their own merits. No, nobody.
Right.
So we need to, in my opinion, my perspective, and the type of, maybe what I would love to see anyways, is that we have a community where people can be real and talk and can be their individual selves. Like you enjoy individual flower beds with all these individual fragrances, but together recognize that we're all part and parcel of Krishna. We're all part and parcel of God, and we're all doing what we can. Everybody's doing their absolute best at where they're at. Even if you project your best, like, no, you should be doing better. You're not them. That's not your power. It's not your job. Like, I think that the biggest challenge with being in any community is people start to overstep their boundaries of what's their responsibility. Okay, I'll give you a story. This is how devotees get turned away. Me, I wasn't getting turned away for nothing. But I was like, so I remember after a Bhakti Sastri class, there was like a little room in the Toronto temple where you could just sit and eat and chat. And I was telling some story about like my trip to Mexico or something like that. Like, no, nothing. I was not talking Krishna consciousness, right? I was just talking, right? We were chatting, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, and I was saying, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, hey, what's going on? Anyways, this lady comes up to me and she's like, and she doesn't know this about me. I'm 2 weeks at this temple. This is like my second Bhakti Sastri. I have no idea about anything, right? And she comes up and she's like, you're so entwined with material sense gratification. And I didn't know. And I didn't know what she meant. So I said, thank you.
No. Oh my God, I'm dead, bro.
I don't know that was a bad thing. But reflecting on that story, if I was a person that had huge concern of what others thought of me, I could have been out right there. Like, that could have been it. Because it wasn't what she said. I knew she was insulting me, but I didn't get how material gratification was an insult because I didn't understand I didn't have the language, right? So she's insulting me, but I know from her tonality that she's not, because I remember I said thank you and I walked away because I'm like, okay, so obviously I'm not like, winning her over, right? And so I was like, okay. I said thank you and I walked away. And then later on when I learned it, and then I was like, oh, and then I was like, well, oh yeah. I mean, it makes sense. I get why she said it, right? Type of thing. But my point is this, how many devotees could you imagine, possible devotees, are not devotees right now because that was their interaction within the first 72 hours to 1 week of being introduced to Krishna consciousness. Okay, I'll give you another example. I'm not going to name names this because they're more well-known people, at least within Canada, right? So people come. I bring some new people to a program we're having. Some experienced devotees come. And the most experienced of us all says to the guy in a different conversation I had, because he gave him some mantra beads, he said, put these beads around you. Because the guy said, can I wear them around the neck? And we know that we don't wear our beads around their neck. They're not like our necklace, you know what I mean? Right? Type of thing, right? But Maharaj says, go ahead. Yes, because he's bringing him in. He's introducing him. He's just the spirit around him. This guy, we knew this guy from nothing. This guy was walking on the street. He is changing his entire life right in front of us by totally dropping what he was doing to come to us back to a kirtan. I'm blown away. I'm seeing like, this is like, wow. Like, I'm witnessing this. And I'm like, this guy was literally walking this way. He's now walking the opposite direction with us and he's got his japamala around his neck. And he is in love. Like, he's just like, oh, this is amazing, blah, blah, blah. And he's telling the stories. He's native. Anyway, so he comes, some of our younger, more experienced brahmacharis who are on the trip as well, well, they come. And what's the first thing that comes out of their mouth? Oh, Prabhu. First they call him Prabhu. What?
Oh my God.
Oh, Prabhu. I was like, that's like if you don't know what that means, that's like coming up to someone being like, boo, you're like, what are you doing? Prabhu, you can't wear this around your neck, You know, this is unclean. But giving this guy, and I stepped in and said, hey, Maharaj said he can wear it, it's fine. And then they backed up. I was like, you see, this is the thing. This is what I've seen, and this is one of many stories I've personally witnessed. So not to mention the millions that are out there that I've personally witnessed going, do you expect somebody to now bow down and be like, yes, this is such an amazing, I feel the love, I feel connected here. You've made someone instantly wrong for having no idea what they're even wrong about. Right? And then when they know, to me, what gets to me is the piety of the unpious. I'm not pious, okay? So I'm not going to walk around like I'm vegetarian. Yeah, 3 years. What do you think? I'm going to walk around now being like, oh gosh, eating meat, eh? Oh my God. Well, let me tell you, sastra, blah, blah. I was like, it's 3 years ago I stopped eating meat. What? Now that gives me permission to go around and now judge every meat eater out there and start calling them names and start talking bad about them, criticizing. Well, what you speak will come. You speak criticism, you'll get. And this is what devotees don't know is I don't think they understand is that every time you allow your willpower, you allow yourself to go into somebody else's department or authority. Your job, I don't want to tell you what your job is anybody. So let me rephrase this. I'm trying to say this in a way that I want to really try to get this language properly.
You guys said
everybody's job. Right. My job, in my understanding, is to grow and develop my relationship with Krishna, and my relationship to ISKCON is the school in which I feel can teach me the best. I've tried other schools. I love the school of Srila Prabhupada, and so therefore I accept ISKCON because Srila Prabhupada is set up ISKCON. So I hate to see ISKCON break up into these factions. I understand them, but I hate to see it. And I'll tell you another individual story about how Ritvik really helped me in my Krishna consciousness. Okay, and so what I see ISKCON as a school to come together. And that's what it reminds me when I was sitting in the Bhakti Sastri class. I'm like, this is class. Oh yeah. And there's, and there's the same archetype of there's the girl who will never break a rule, but she's like really deeply sexually repressed. And that way anybody who offers her attention, she's in love. Right? Oh, there's that. And there's the guy who's always in trouble. That's me. And there's the blah, blah, blah. And there's, and it's like, oh, okay, I see that it's the same dynamic. We're not really changing here. We're just simply shoveling ourselves into a new label. But have we had a real conscious shift? Can you see Krishna in your life? Can you see Krishna in me? No, you can't see it in me. He's too egotistical. It's too covered. It's covered by all his Maya, right? You know what I mean? To me, anyways, I'm just ranting on here.
Yeah, at this point, like, I kind of want to circle it back. Yeah. Although, like, I'm ecstatic that we've went basically on a 55-minute side tangent from like our original topic. But this is one of the most epic 50 minutes that we've ever had on the whole show. It was just like such an authentic flow of exchange, and I'm relishing it. But you know, I just want to come back to this point, something that I just felt so strongly at a certain point, is that Krishna is never gonna judge you. Srila Prabhupada is never gonna judge you. They're gonna accept you no matter what you are. So, and your Guru Maharaj accepted you, man.
Yeah, man.
So who are you to, like, you know, and I'm talking to everyone, like, none of us have any right whatsoever on any level to judge anyone.
If somebody's sitting in one of our temples, if somebody comes and if somebody comes and interacts with someone, that's Krishna's mercy. That's not your mercy. You know, it's not like oh, look, I brought this devotee. You didn't bring nobody, okay? Trust me. Nobody is qualified to be bringing anybody anywhere. Okay. All right. We're like, and so that's, you know, and so again, we have to see, in my perspective, I think it's important that if we really want to implement Varanashram into society, you know, I'm running for office, right? I'm running for office.
I didn't know that, but it makes perfect sense to me.
Okay. So, and somebody asked me, what do you believe? Because I go to church sometimes, and I'm and I love, and the church that I go to too is a badass church, man. Like that pastor, oh man, he's all into like gun control, gun laws, freedom of guns, freedom of this. He's way out there, right? I love him, bro. And he's real interesting character. And the point I'm making is that when if we want to truly implement Varanashram, or to educate people on that, it means we're going to have to bring in all classes, right? We can't just, unless ISKCON, and excuse me, and correct me if I've misunderstood, but unless ISKCON is strictly here to serve the Brahminical class,
yeah,
then that's cool. And if that's it, then that's cool. That ain't me. Right. So
me neither,
you know
bro.
I mean?
No,
right. But
yeah.
if ISKCON is only to serve the Brahminical class, then you know, then whatever, then that's what it is, right? Like, I don't care, right, if that's what it is. My understanding was ISKCON was a school to teach people Krishna consciousness, and that the request is that we bring these principles and implant these principles into the larger whole of society, which is giving people spiritual life, which means it's going to look very different in very different places. And at my level, the outcast level, you know, the untouchables, where I'm at, I'm cool to be there. I'm perfectly fine with the untouchables. I'm hanging out there, right? Where we're at, we're going to talk about sex and drugs, because that's what the untouchables are doing, all right? So leave my people alone, and so let me just do what I'm going to do, all right? That's it, you know? I feel almost like a little bit protective over the untouchables, right? And to be like, just relax, and you go. That's why there's a temple. I'm not in the temple, right? That's why there's a temple. So that the folks that gravitate, you know, Lord Jagannath, why is Lord Jagannath so merciful? Because he comes out of the temple, right? You know, Lord Jagannath is the only deity which allows an untouchable to hug him and embrace him. That's the mercy of Jagannath. He's going to spread it to everybody, right? He doesn't even have eyelids. He's going to keep his eyes wide open. He's never going to miss a chance to see anybody. Right? Yeah. Not every form is like that, I understand. And so when we go into the temple, there's a standard. And I think those standards should be honored and kept at its highest levels. I really believe that. And then recognize, though, there are guys like me who are going to exist, who are not going to be in the temple. But guess what? Look, I'll give you a practical example. I've been doing as a business. I started the Seaman Retention Army business 8 months ago, okay, where I was like, I'm going to set up a program and we're going to launch program. Since then, we've had 40 students come through the program. Every single one of them has to chant the Maha Mantra as part of the program. So there are people right now in your temple, I promise you, that are there because they interacted with someone like me. Just remember that, George Harrison. Just remember that George Harrison, the Beatle, druggy, hippie, blah, 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 introduced more people to Krishna consciousness than anybody else, other than, obviously like Srila Prabhupada or something. Okay?
I want to this Corona Avatar's point about judgment. I wanted to just
go for it.
Because I think of all sorts of judges, probably the biggest judge is our own self, and which is kind of what we're talking about here. Yes. We judge ourselves most harshly, and I especially if you're a creative type of person, then you're probably really like aware of this, how you're the hardest judging yourself. But it certainly comes to be true when we're trying to talk about standards in the community and all that. So I was kind of curious how like Corona Avatar said, we had this sort of somewhat tangential discussion on how you've kind of been able to keep your authenticity despite having commitments to this greater movement. I'm curious how that translates into how you guide devotees specifically. Because you mentioned last week, there are like different tiers in which people participate in your programs. Some people are coming just for the sex part. Some people are coming because they want to like get control of their psychic world. And then some people are coming to you that are actually, in fact, devotees. And so I'm curious how what you're offering translates in your guidance of devotees specifically who do deal with these like intense self-judgment, and this intense schism that you're aware of. How does what you do translate into guiding them? That's kind of for our last little bit of time we got here.
I just right before you answer that, Prabhu, I just want to kind of expand on that slightly and just plug something in here right now, because at the very beginning, this statement was made that this is really about like being honest about where we're at, being there shamelessly, being there in the most wholesome and conscious way possible, whilst remaining fully conscious of the ultimate ideal and respecting that as the most beautiful, truthful thing, love of God. But now I'm going to be like, Jai just asked, like, how would you be helping the devotees, right? So I'm going to put myself in the position of a typical person in need of your help. Someone who is like your ideal client, because I believe I am, right? And I'm going to tell you that, it's like, and I just, just kind of like, just kind of circling back a little bit again to just what we just spoke about, Nakul, you made this really interesting point that essentially, our ISKCON society and the ISKCON culture is very much one of, it's like for the Brahmanas, the standard that we follow are inherently Brahminical standards that are being, propounded by the Shastra. It's like it's a Brahminical. So basically, the culture is the following: you should want love of God as your ultimate desire. That's what you should want, and the way that you conduct your life to pursue that desire should be in a like very strictly Brahminical way, right? But the fact of the matter is that doesn't, as you said, that doesn't apply to so many people, because so many people aren't Brahmanas, and then it's like you're forced to kind of feel like you're okay, so this is me, this is where I'm at, right now. I don't desire love of God practically at all, like I read a book like Tripurari Swami's Aesthetic Vedanta that Jai actually recommended to me some years ago, in which like the essential goal of life, like love of God, is described in the most like, you just can't believe how beautiful it is. If you haven't read, you can't believe how beautifully it's articulated. I read a book like that, I'm like, this is everything. But do I really want that right now? No. You know what I want right now? I want to set myself up in order to be like the best family man that I possibly can be.
Right.
I want to be like the best husband I can be. I want to be the best dad that I possibly can be. I want to live in this world in an authentic way. I want to be healthy. I want to like, that's what I want to do. Like maybe I'll get her, because also just circling back to what we said before, it's like, if you don't have an identity, you don't have a sense of self, you don't have a container within which your ego is established, then it's like, what have you taken up? What have you dedicated yourself to? There is nothing to renounce, bruh. So it's like, I'm this dude, I'm like, I'm like 50 rounds for procreation. Please, man. Okay, so I'm your ideal client,
All
bruh.
right.
So tell me.
So the first thing is, I would say to you, or probably help you get to a place where you accept where you're at and you stop fighting where you're at. Based upon, I think like a trainer. I'm a trainer. I'm a trained trainer. I've trained sales most of my life. I've trained public speaking. I've trained entrepreneurs. This is my background. And then I discovered semen retention, and I've like combined these two things. Like, here are training principles that help you grow and achieve something, whether you want to whether you want to get to 16 rounds every single day, or whether you want to rock the bedroom. It's the same growth principles, right? So the principles of growth are the same. Where you're directing them to, I don't choose for you. So the first thing that I tell everyone is, I'm going to show you how to be a sexual alchemist. I'm going to show you how to explode your energy. I'm going to show you how to like really skyrocket your evolutionary process through the practice of semen retention. What you do with that energy is up to you. I don't guide. I'm not a guru. I don't guide people on their spiritual path. I get spiritual questions and I will share my experience thus far, but I'm very clear that I am not your guru, right? And I am specifically going to teach you techniques to keep your semen in your body, okay? So that as a man like me, who's going to have sex, who is going to participate in the world, I don't have a massive energy loss or drain, okay? So the first thing I would say to any devotee, and while my program is not created for devotees, and the majority of my students right now are not devotees, I do have devotee students. First thing I say to them is, accept where you're at. This is what's going on. This is what's going on. You got this porn addiction. You got this masturbation addiction. Sex is occupying your mind, or you want higher realizations, but you feel stuck because you're conflicted between your sexuality and your spirituality. So there's a conflict there. So the first thing is, I say, you have to accept where you're at. Now that okay, this is where you're at. It's like, if I can only lift 5 pounds, but I want to lift 50 pounds, I have to first accept I can only lift 5 pounds, right? Because what ends up happening is people are like, get into it. I know I did the same thing, right? Oh yeah, they'll probably be calling me Swami G in 6 months because I really get it. I'm really there, I had this experience, and I read the Gita halfway. I read half of it. But I know it in my heart. Everybody's kind of like goes through, because that's we're all coming to Krishna consciousness with our egos and all that stuff, right? So everybody tends to go on this excited, enthusiastic journey of Krishna consciousness at the beginning, where they're all renounced, and then the first ankle they see, right? All of a sudden, renunciation is like, oh, maybe not, right? So accept where you're at. And accept yourself as God accepts you. What people have asked me before, what gives you the strength to be able to do what you're doing, right? Whether it's in Krishna consciousness or in politics or in the world of sex, or it doesn't matter, right? It's like, I said, because God loves me. I don't need your love. I have God's love. Your love is nice, and I appreciate it, and I do want it. I want this connection. I love hanging out with people, but I don't look for love from other people. God is my source of love, and I know in my heart He loves me. In fact, I have a great relationship with God, right? I play fight with God. I've literally been like this. Because that's how I'll pray, right? Because I'll have so much pent up energy that I'll like do these punching exercises. Imagine me and Krishna boxing, right? And I'm like, have this just like playful relationship with him that I think my relationship is a little bit like, I'm not saying like I'm like this, but I'm saying like as an example to use might be someone like a cowherd boy to Krishna, right? I don't worship Krishna like the way Prabhupada worshiped Krishna, right? You know, I talk to Krishna like I would talk to you. Like, I'm like, all right, man. All right. I know I slacked off this week. All right. But I'm back. And blah, 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 blah. And I can hear him in my energy just being like, just shut up and get to work again. Like, get serious, get committed, be committed, right? It's all about the sincerity of that relationship, I find. So the first thing is accept where you're at. Then the second thing is make your source. If you're a devotee, make your source of love and make your source of inspiration Krishna. And if that's through your guru, so me, I think of Maharaj because he's such a joyful character. He's such a joyful personality. So when I think of him, naturally I feel that joy.
Yeah, he
right?
sure is.
So yeah, so I think of Maharaj, I think of Krishna, and then I interact with Krishna in my heart and in my thoughts in a very friendly way. And so internally, I don't feel I'm not free of this, but to a large degree, I don't feel shame, guilt, or like regret or any of these feelings because I know like God loves me. Like I was like, look, and he knows I'm an idiot sometimes, just like my dad knows I'm an idiot sometimes, but he still loves me because he's my dad, right? Like, so Krishna knows, like I know that Krishna knows what I'm doing, and he's like, I know you're not being sincere here, and there's these underlining, you know, and you really want to make a sale and blah blah, right? I know he knows all that, and I don't try to hide that from him. So therefore, I don't try to hide it from anybody else because he's already loves and accepts me. And this is what I'm talking about our society as a whole. Are people surrendering because they finally surrender to the love of Krishna, or are they conforming because they want the love of their devotee friend? So the question that I ask devotees is, who are you trying to attract? The devotees or Krishna? Believe me, Krishna is attracted already, right? Are you trying to attract him? And he knows in your heart.
Powerful. And also, just before you go on, I apologize for cutting you off, but
that's okay.
It's very powerful. The reason I find it powerful because this sort of thinking has been part of my personal journey for a very long time. The way you say you kind of talk to Krishna, I've been doing that from the very beginning. When I was serving on the altar, I have many stories like this. At the same time, where I guess a rub point comes up for maybe devotee hearers who are hearing this, there's no question of we need to be confident that Krishna is seeing us and having affection for us. And if we can have that confidence, then it's a lot easier to relinquish guilt and shame and so on, because, you know, a parent loves a child. Love is love, no matter what's going on with the individual, you know, periodically. Or at the same time, the way that not only is it preached to us, but the way that it is, according to Srimad Bhagavatam, that the devotees represent also Krishna's manifestation in this world. Krishna's mercy comes through the gateway of the devotees. And there are many shlokas. One shloka from the Devata's prayers to Krishna's coming in my mind. So that I think when devotees seek validation from their devotee community, you know, and now the question can come, what type of devotees?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
That's the nuance
Totally.
there. But when you're seeking validation from like your devotee community, which is less of a seeking Krishna's validation through devotees and more like the social validation.
Yeah.
I guess that's where the confusion comes
and that's where it becomes an individual journey, because you don't know. I don't know. I don't have that vision to say, oh no, that was not a sincere, you know, seeking a validation. You're just trying to you just want me to puff up and tell you you're a good cook because your prasadam was good. I don't know that. And even if I think I might know it, who cares? Like, this is so petty. It's so petty. Like, what we pick on is so petty. Like, I see what people, it's just like, are you really talking? Okay, I'll give you another story. I was sitting in the temple, and there's a gentleman, and nobody was around, just a few of us in the temple. And I'm chanting on the other side. A guy's in his zone, and he looks like he is in it, man. Like, I'm so entranced. He's so entranced that I'm entranced in him. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, I don't forget my japa because I'm like, this guy is experiencing japa. I'll just watch him do it, right? So he's there, and he's there for a while. A younger monk comes into the room, interrupts him. Prabhu, oh, Prabhu, you have to be sitting on a mat. You know, the mat is not right? And he's going on about the mat. And so,
oh my God.
And I'm thinking in my head, now I'm new devotee, as I still am. So I'm going, hold on. Is that, so I bring it up to a more senior devotee. I say, can you correct my thinking here, right? Like, I'm open to adjustments here. I say, this is the situation that I saw. Am I missing something? Is it more important in the practice that he was sitting on a mat, maybe because, you know, because he was conscious of the mat or the cleanliness issue or whatever it was, right? Is it more important was that worth it to stop his japa when he's chanting to tell him about the mat? And the answer I got, and I'd be curious because I've never really publicly asked, so I'd be curious to hear what devotees think or think. But the answer I received was, well, it was very politically, it's like, well, the rules are important because they keep us, like, gives us a structure to work in and to stay together. And I was like, oh, that makes sense, right? It's right. Totally gives us a structure to work in. And then at the same time, we have to use our wisdom to see what is necessary or needed at that particular time. And so that was the answer I received. So it wasn't a yes or no or the blah, but it was.
Well, it's niyamagra and niyama agraha. You know, it's like one who is nectar of instruction. Jai, what's the thing? You're the scholar.
Niyama agraha means clinging too tightly to rules, and niyama agraha means not clinging tightly enough.
Okay, so I'm here to let it go a little bit, because why? A guy, okay, this is a universal principle. So if ISKCON, if any of the leaders are like going, what is this? Like, what is going on? I am the balance to your tightness. Somebody has to be like, are you going to loosen up the grip and allow people to grow and learn and expand and love and fall in love with God and the wonderful culture in which we bring to the world, which is so desperately needed right now? You know what I mean? What we have is so needed right now in the world. It's why I'm running for politics, because I was like, people have to remember that they're spiritual, and a lot of this will just chill. They won't be so afraid of the flu if they remember that they're spiritual, right? I can't do it on this podcast and hold a straight face because you're laughing.
You know, the other reason that I'm laughing is because on my social media, I keep sharing things about the flu also.
Oh, do you?
So people, you know, they're going to think like we're in cahoots, you know, like subtly trying to indicate.
Yeah, we're not. Yeah. But I guess we are, but we're not consciously in cahoots, but unconsciously we are. But anyways, the point is this, that when people know who they are spiritually, they're not easily as swayed by anything, even other spiritual things. But if you are just latching on to a community, if you're latching on to ISKCON because you think this is where you're going to, all your problems are going to disappear, and it's just going to be this, like, you know, people come to kirtans, right? And they get this like almost like love, abundance of love and festivity and great stuff. And then they come to Sastra and then they're like, what was... and then next thing they don't come no more, right? So there is a bridge to gap between the kirtan and the sastra and the philosophy, right? The way that we introduce people to Krishna consciousness and then come in. But it's like, if we don't massage that and allow people to be okay in their spiritual exploration, right? And don't welcome them in, they're not going to stay in, because they're not going to feel that they can still be themselves. See, why do most people come to spiritual life? Right? They're suffering, right? That's right. That most people come, sure. Right? What is the four things?
Sure. Yeah.
Suffering, right?
All right. So the suffering, the stress is basically the main category. The other three categories, money, like who's coming to God for material these days?
Not these days. Maybe back then
those who are inquisitive, very few in number. Those who are after the absolute truth, very few. So suffering, we got it.
Suffering. Most of us come because we're suffering, right? And so, and what most of us are suffering from is mental anguish, constant self-judgment, constant fighting ourselves, So wouldn't it make sense, the first mercy that we could give is say, hey, you've come to a place where you're not judged. Wow. That's what they get at the kirtan. Because everybody's engaged at the kirtan. They right now have relief. It's like taking an Advil, right? They have relief from their mental suffering, and that's what they love.
Dude, I'm sorry. This hits differently right now because I just came back from 24-hour kirtan in New Vrindavan.
Yeah.
And the kirtans were incredible, but particularly the last night of kirtan, it was so unbelievable. The type of dancing and chanting that was going on, it was just so wild and it was so joyful. And reflecting on it afterwards, that was exactly what I was like. There was no anguish, no envy, no anguish, no fear of judgment. Everyone was just dancing together, chanting, goofing off.
That's right. And the spirit's alive.
Yeah, the spirit. So it hits differently hearing this right in the context of coming back from New Vrindavan. I'm like super sore. I'm still recovering.
Yeah. That's amazing. It's like, so kirtan, you can almost look at it at the negation part of it, right? There's the positive and there's the negative. So to understand the negative or the absence, kirtan is the absence of all of this stuff that keeps us in anguish. That's why when they asked Srila Prabhupada, what do you feel when you chant? He actually gave a negative answer. He said fearlessness, like lack of fear, no fear. He's not in his body, which is full of fear and anxiety and false identity and this. That's why you can't accept me. If you can't accept me, you can't accept the fact that I'm challenging your belief system. But your belief system is on the mental platform. We're asking you not to believe in Krishna. We're asking you to know Krishna. You know the difference? You know there's a difference between belief and knowing. Right. If you believe in Krishna, you still may not know Krishna. I'm telling you, I know Krishna because I had an experience with Krishna, and it was only after that experience that the Gita said, and here's some language to now back up your experience. And by the way, don't think that I gave you a taste, but don't think that humble yourself and don't think that you've made it, right? So it's like, okay, there is experiencing Krishna, and that's what kirtan is. And you can almost say, if you want to give it your mind a negative way to look at it, like the negation, this is the absence of fear. It's the absence of material consciousness or the absence of bodily consciousness. But when the kirtan's over and then you go back to and you stand in line or you're talking to your friend, watch your body consciousness come take back over, right? Somebody looks good, your body's taking over. Somebody looks at you funny, your body's taking over because they're like, oh, I'm not sure. Like, did they look at me funny? Do I have something in my teeth? You know, did they see me take that extra potato ball? Right? You know, I didn't think anybody saw that, but maybe they did. I don't know. Right? See, all of the body stuff comes up. So I think what ends up happening, and I'm only speaking from my own journey so far, is that we experience kirtan and are like, wow, I'm in. How could you not be in, right? You're like, wow. Then you start to interact with devotees outside of kirtan, outside of that, and then all the judgments and self stuff comes up, and much of it is in ourselves. We walk around the temple wondering who's going to judge us next, right? My dhoti's not, my dhoti's not folded correctly, right? I'm wearing see-through underwear, right? Like, I shouldn't have worn my black briefs because they show through the white dhoti too much, right? It's all of this stuff. And then what we end up doing, now here's how it manifests out into Sunday feast gossip, is that we then do this. We then do this. Oh, I'm so uncomfortable in myself that it obviously can't be me. It must be that person's insincerity. It must be that person's Maya affecting my peace here. It must be the way that they distributed the prasad. It must be the way because the pujari didn't, rotate the incense the way I like it. Or I didn't get splashed with the water and now I feel left out. So it's his fault. It's like, no, it's not your fault, man. It's your own insecurity. It's your own self stuff. It's just you. It's just you and you alone creating so much misery for yourself, then projecting it outwards onto others in the community. And then it becomes a whole political side of it where it's like now the administrators want to now make rules. This is what's happening, not just in ISKCON. This is what's happening in society as a large. Somebody feels left out. Okay. So that now the administration wants everybody to change everything so this one person doesn't feel left out. Right, but the more they try to include this all of this, the more they try to include this one person, what does it then do? It sparks someone else then says, well, hold on, they are they, them, and I'm he. Okay, well, so you're he. Now we got how many? Now we got like something like 96 genders or something like this, and adding. Like we're just why? We are so in our heads and we are so in La La Land, right? And this is caused by this type of over control. It's what happens when the leadership squeezes. So somebody like me has to show up and say, loosen up. If not, it's going to get worse. If you think what I'm talking about now is bad, wait till I teach. No, I won't go there. I'm just joking, right? But the point is that there will always be a counterbalance to your action. So as an organization, if you're starting to see a rebellion starting, ask yourself, why would there be such a counteraction? Right? And that's just my perspective.
Yeah, I wanted to double back. Just sorry, just to make sure he answered your questions on the because you're coaching Karuna or us in general, guys. So we got the first point was stop fighting where you're at. That was the very first point you made. You made many compelling points underneath. And the second point you made was make your source of love and inspiration Krishna. And then that's when I asked the sort of tangential thing, because you're like, don't just look for the sort of social component amongst your devotee sangha, but gaining confidence that Krishna has affection for you so that you're able to let go of shame and guilt and all those things.
Here's both my strength. It's been my strength in Krishna consciousness and it's my weakness in Krishna consciousness association. My strength in it is I didn't have much, so therefore I'm not ISKCON. Like I'm obviously I haven't been socially conditioned enough to act a certain way or to talk a certain way because now I'm Krishna, I have to talk like this, right? Or whatever, right? It's like so in one sense, I don't have enough association to mold me like that. So, but in my one sense, that's my strength. It will be presented as my weakness. He doesn't. This is clear. It's clear what's happening here. He's just not good associated. Fine, I don't want to be. I already told you that, right? But I still get to love God. Just because I don't want to hang out, just because I don't want to hang out with your friend circle doesn't mean I don't get to love God. And it doesn't mean I don't get to worship. And it doesn't mean I don't get to participate. Okay.
Yeah. No, this is great. And this is the exact right moment for me to throw in this thing into the works, because this is kind of heavy one. Krishna loves us, right? Like, he loves us unconditionally. But I came to this realization that I feel like we're all feeling like, unless if we don't strictly stay within the parameters of these 4 principles, then we cannot then our love for God, what we feel for Krishna, is invalid.
Yeah. It's
like it's because it's not pure.
Yeah.
It's not pure. It can't be real. Then it's like,
no, it's just not. It just might not be on the same platform as Srila Prabhupada. I accept my love of God is not Srila Prabhupada's love of God, but that doesn't mean I don't love God.
Dude, exactly. But that's the thing that I've been feeling, is just like, I have all sorts of other desires, but I really, really appreciate Krishna because I know him, because I experience
your desires with Krishna, right? You dovetail your desires. Isn't that what we're taught? It's to dovetail our desires, right? Look, you know what you're facing is it's not a Krishna consciousness thing. This is a human thing. And that's why I also like to work outside of the ISKCON walls, because these aren't ISKCON issues. These are human issues, okay? We're all taught to obey authority. And if we don't obey authority, we are bad, okay? So now we've just accepted a new authority and now we're still bad. Right? So you feel guilty because you don't follow the government because you don't want to wear your mask, right? You feel bad because they said that you have to absolutely be this pure being, if not your love of God isn't pure, right? And it's like, well, that's not true actually in that sense, because think of a child. A child will make a mistake, but his mistake is done in pure love, because the purity, the sincerity, and the action may not match. That we can all agree, right? That's why I'm also not lying to anybody. I'm not telling anybody, come join my movement and be brahmachari and be swami. No, you will not be swami or be brahmachari in the semen retention army. What you will learn is how to retain your semen so you get the psychological and mental benefits of semen retention. Now, if you're a devotee, you'll know that there are spiritual benefits to that. It's so funny, right inside the semen retention army today. So there's a guy who literally started. He's like, I'm not really spiritual, but he's divorced. He's 44. He's got divorced. He's rebuilding his life. He wants to practice semen retention. He wants to get his mojo back because he's got a lot of blocks between him and women right now. So here's the work that we're doing, right? First, self-acceptance. He joined 23 days ago. So I've been working with 23 days. First, accept where you're at. Great. Now, he said to me, spirituality is not like, I'm interested, but it's not the main motivation. Perfect. No problem. So we'll call it then, you have to love yourself. You have to learn from within to be able to accept where you're at. I want you to forget about women. I want you to forget about porn, masturbation, or any higher sexual techniques for now, because right now is not the time for you. Right? So here we're putting some guidelines around him. Now, here's what's happened. Day 23 today. He sends the message because we have these accountability groups that we run, right? So he sends a message to the group. He says, guys, this is becoming spiritual. He says, I have been doing the forgiveness work and recognized that I have so much fear, resentment, anger around what happened, my wife, how she controlled me. Then he's changed his language, how I let her control me, how I never set my boundaries, right? So he's shifting his language from victim to You don't come here and talk about, oh, the world did me bad. Now it's what was your part to play in that, right? What was your part to play in that? You didn't set boundaries. You didn't accept yourself. You didn't guide yourself and use your own inner strength to know where you're at and be okay with that. You're still looking for the outside world to validate you. And so that's where we're here. And now he's diving more into the spiritual aspect because he's realizing that unless he gets this inner world under control, unless we get this inner world mastered, right, which is our domain, right? We live in the city of 9 gates. We don't live in anywhere else. This is where we live, in the body. So this is the first place, and this is our battlefield, sort of say. This is the chariot that we're sitting in, and we have to learn to get the reins under control. Right? So that's the process. So the process, it's a little bit loose because I tailor it to individuals. So for him, it was this. Now I got another guy. He's a ISKCON hangabout, we can call it, if we use biker language, right? He's not initiated. He's not. He's a hang around, right? He's a hang around. That's biker language. He's a hang around, right? He can't. He said to me, he had a conversation with me. He said, I have a hard time getting into ISKCON because I'm just not there. Like I can't, I'm not going to do the 4 principles. I'm not there. Because he was wondering if I would accept him because and I said, no. I said, look, semen retention and army and ISKCON is not, we don't operate on the same wavelength or anything. I said, just, you come in here and you practice semen retention. And then as you practice, you let me know how you want to grow and be guided. And you'll notice that these guys, and if you look at no-fap guys, and you'll notice that they all start on this platform of I can have more sex and get more women. And then eventually they're either talking about Jesus, they're talking about yoga, their sub form of spiritual form shows up in their life because it's scientific. Semen retention if you never read the Sastra, scientifically, semen retention will help you evolve spiritually because it develops your ojas. It develops your actual spiritual body. It refines your raw semen, which is carrying all the material desire, back into like water that gets boiled and turns into gas and becomes invisible. Your semen goes through the same process, and that's what creates your auric field or your light body. Or they used to say Srila Prabhupada had an effulgence, right? Right. It's because he had that, but his effulgence wasn't sexually driven. His effulgence was completely driven by love of God, and that's why his purity and all that's there. But to think because you joined 3 years ago that tomorrow you're going to be Srila Prabhupada, and let's not also like every movement does this, where all of a sudden the leader or the founder becomes more than human. Okay, right? And I'm sorry if this is going to rub people the wrong way, okay? Srila Prabhupada was clearly an empowered soul, and Srila Prabhupada was human. He had a wife, he had kids, he had a business. It didn't do very well. He talks about it. He didn't talk much about his past because he was engaged in where he was going and what he was doing. But let's not forget that Srila Prabhupada was a human being who took 11 years before he didn't even want to go. It was a friend that took him, said, I met these Swamijis, I'm not impressed, right? He didn't even want to go. But he was so impressed with his spiritual master, but then he took 11 years to get initiated. Like, just think about day-to-day life. Srila Prabhupada was a human being with human problems. I'm sure he made many human mistakes, right? And the process, and obviously empowerment and his karma, what allowed him to do what he did. I don't have that karma. And I wasn't born into those families and in that society. So we all have to work with where we're at. But semen retention, regardless of where anyone starts, you'll see that naturally they gravitate to a spiritual consciousness. Because once the semen begins to flow upwards in the body, the higher tissues and the higher the higher processes within your body begin to work, your memories increased. And once your memories increased, your neural pathways will start to fire off differently, meaning you'll be able to make new connections and associations. So therefore, you'll all of a sudden be able to see things that you could not see before, because literally a physical process, your brain has more neurons firing off, where you are actually allowed to perceive the world and make new connections that others can't make. Semen retention, whether you have sex and not, whether you have sex or don't have sex, if you retain your semen, that will happen to you. And therefore, you will consciously grow.
It seems like a lot of the work that you're describing now, a lot of the work in the beginning, at least, is learning, helping people learn to just kind of self-accept where they're at.
Totally.
It's like the story you just shared of this non-devotee client of yours, 23 days, like doing forgiveness work or whatever it is you were calling it. Seems like that's like a huge portion of the work in the beginning.
At the beginning, yes.
Yeah, because and I guess that makes sense to me in the context of the sort of work you might do with, if like suddenly tons of devotees would come to you as a result of this podcast, or just getting your name out more. There would be a lot of work to do in that department, because I suspect that the self-image of most people, younger men especially today, is pretty demoralized. Just not because of ISKCON specifically.
No, not because of ISKCON. Yeah, that's right.
And so giving a sense of self-worth and self-value, where you will not allow yourself to do the things that you're the ideal you would not do. And that's going to take some time to establish.
I really appreciate what you said about like making the emphasis that these problems are not ISKCON problems. This is a cultural overall society. And we have to remember that ISKCON is a society that operates in a larger society. So to think that when you come through the walls of ISKCON, that all of those problems are somehow melted away when you walk through the temple door is just foolishness.
Yeah,
Prabhupada said that by chanting Hare Krishna, you become bright-faced devotee.
You become what?
A bright face? Is that how he said it?
What does that mean?
Like he would always talk about how happy and like
you just become
lively the devotees were looking.
Right.
I forget bright face. I forget the language Prabhupada would use often. Something like bright face.
Yeah, if I remember, one of my Bhakti Sastri teachers said, if you're not becoming happier in Krishna consciousness, you're not doing Krishna consciousness right. Like you should actually be becoming happier. If you find yourself becoming more cynical, more skeptical, more judgmental, then you need to check in and say, wait, whoa. Is this love of God? If I love God, and therefore I love his part and parcels. Right? As soon as you separate the two, how do you bow to the deity and you get in, oh my gosh, yes, and then turn around to someone and be like, oh my gosh, you messed up the arti and you blah blah blah, or right after bowing to the deity, you turn around and be like, so you know what's going on with so and so and blah 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 blah. It's like, so you're not transferring you're not seeing God everywhere yet, and this is the principle. This is actually so. Oh man, I wish I had it. There is a verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita where Lord Chaitanya speaks about the sex principle. Actually, Prabhupada in the purport talks about actually the unique contribution to religion of Lord Chaitanya specifically is encompassing the sex principle.
That is actually, maybe it's from CC, but it's actually comes in it. Science of Self-Realization, last chapter.
I will trust your. I
can read it.
Yeah. And
the only reason I know this passage so well is because my own search for spirituality was based on trying to discover the authenticity of romantic love.
Okay.
And in that context, I discovered this is my first book that made me a devotee. Overnight, I read it and became a devotee.
Wow.
And these are one of the statements that forever sticks out in my brain. Shall I read it?
Yeah.
It's one of those sections very interesting.
Let's hear it.
And this is Science of Self-Realization, is chapter 8, last chapter in the book. In unalloyed love of Godhead, we have to engage our senses, sarvindriya, all the senses. This means that sex is also to be engaged in Krishna consciousness. The conception of God as father or mother does not allow the engagement of one's sex in the service of the Lord, because there is no sexual relationship with the father and mother. But in the conception of God as a lover, there is sexual engagement also. Therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave the most perfect information of our engagement with the Supreme Lord. In other religious conceptions of life, God is at the utmost taken as a father or mother. Many worshippers in India take the goddess Kali to be the representation of God. Of course, that is not sanctioned, but the belief is there. And also in the Christian religion, the conception of God is as a father. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu informs us that one can even have sexual engagement with the Lord. This information is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's unique contribution. And then he goes on to say a little bit more and how the impersonalists understand this.
That's right. And it's not to say that, again, we don't want to be the guru who uses that to have sex and right. Yeah. So it's to understand that the sex principle is what makes the Hare Krishna movement so unique. It is Chaitanya's contribution to engage everything into Krishna. Everything. That's not, you can't say everything, but there's just everything in Krishna consciousness, right?
Not only everything, Sarvendriya is used, so all the senses.
All the senses.
Sarvendriya is a word used.
To use all the senses in worship of God. And while it's again, because we look at the renunciants and the swamis as the topmost, as our gurus and leaders, we all see ourselves, if we have self-esteem issues, we see ourselves as beneath them or not as qualified to love God. But I just don't agree with that. Like, I don't know what else to say with that. It doesn't, the best I could say is, in my heart, I feel God loves me and accepts me. But that doesn't mean I disregard Srila Prabhupada or the gurus to say, wow, look at that. That is something to be inspired by, something to aspire to if you so desire. But that's if you so desire. The truth is, I don't so desire that at this time in my life. Maybe that's the truth.
Yeah.
So can I no longer be part of ISKCON because I don't desire? That's basically what you're saying. If you don't desire to go back to Godhead today, you're basically not worthy as a devotee.
It's the should.
And I'm saying I don't think that that's accurate.
Yeah, bruh. It's the should element. That's what's the problem.
Sure.
Yeah. What do you want to say, Jai?
No, I'm just reflecting back what I'm hearing. What I'm hearing is that I'm hearing a lot of things, but I'm trying to tie it together. I'm trying to synthesize here.
Sure.
And what I'm hearing is that, especially when dealing around this sort of touchy subject matter, where people have inherited a lot of deep shame and guilt, particularly around the sexuality principle, they need to work on, we'll call it self-acceptance. And as far as feeling Krishna's love also, in order to get that inspiration and encouragement, at least the devotees they engage with, in a sense, we have a service. If we see ourselves as trying to service our community in any way, in a sense, we have a service of allowing people the space to evolve without having the pressure on them that you should be doing X, Y, Z at this particular moment. Like giving them enough love and let's say appreciation and self-acceptance, but being removed enough or detached sufficiently where they have the space to grow, and which comes with the making of the mistakes and not having to beat themselves up over it because they made a mistake, and giving them all that. So if we have any service we can do, that would be part of it.
Yeah, and I would say that most of us are very sufficient in beating ourselves up from every little thing that we do, right? Because we've been taught that. We've been taught from the older, we've been taught, again, this is not an ISKCON issue. This is a cultural issue. We've been taught to obey authority, right? And when I say that, meaning you can choose your authorities. You have free will. Krishna has given you free will, but we forget that because we feel guilty if we exercise our free will in a way that our social construct doesn't accept. But what ends up happening is our social construct becomes now a source of pain. instead of a source. So now everybody's just sitting there out of obligation. Why isn't ISKCON growing? Why isn't it? Well, ISKCON is growing in certain areas. Look in Russia. ISKCON is just thriving. But have you seen the way in which the Russians have encompassed their own culture into it in their own way, right? But it's like in other parts of ISKCON that I've seen, and I'm definitely not an ISKCON expert, obviously, right? Like, so like, let's just qualify that. I'm talking about the very minuscule way that I've interacted with ISKCON is that it's not like that in other places. It's very much like, this is it. And these are and again, you shouldn't bend on the rules or anything like that. You don't have to bend on anything, but let people come to it themselves, like allow them the space to grow. And that's what Maharaj did for me. Maharaj never has judged me. He's never, he's just like, get engaged. That's all he does. He just keeps me engaged. Can you do this? Can you do that? Right. And I know he's just hooking me, like, just like keep me there, because then naturally the consciousness takes over, right? Naturally, you're like, okay, I'm gonna offer this prasad, even though I'm really hungry and I want to eat right now. I'm gonna do it. Right, because the consciousness is there, right? Is there. And so like Srila Prabhupada said, if somebody chants Hare Krishna enough and they keep that up, eventually it will all straighten out. But what we try to do, and this is more of a material consciousness, is we try to fast forward the process. We start to compare ourselves to other devotees, right? Oh, look at this guy. He came last week. He's already a monk, or whatever, right? Type of thing. And it's like, oh, well, and look at me. I'm still watching porn secretly, right? Yeah, right. It's like, it's like, don't put people up on a pedestal.
Yeah.
You like it's a fine line between, see, and that's the thing. It's always a double-edged sword, right? It's a fine line between worshiping and admiring and then getting inspired to now I have no sense of self because my whole identity is wrapped up in someone else's journey and results. Right? And I teach men to bring their awareness back into their bodies, into themselves, and work from there, right? And I guarantee you, when you really come back into your body, your sex will be there. And if you don't deal with it, if you don't look at it, and you think you're just, you may have a disposition. Like I said, not everybody needs someone like me. I'm not for everybody. There's many devotees who probably should never interact with someone like me for their own consciousness and good. And I get that. I get that, right? Like, you don't send your brahmachari to me and say, go learn from this guy. That's a bad idea, because I'm going to talk about things like porn and sex and masturbation. And for a lot of guys, it's just going to agitate them. What I'm looking for is the guys who are already agitated by these things and say, don't worry, I got something for you. I got something to help you. Right?
Well, this is a good, I don't know, Karuna Avatar, if you have some
things. It's a good point. I agree. A good place to.
I was going to say, what are we going to get in the sex mastery course? Because you're going to do a sex mastery course with us on Saturday.
Okay. Just before that, I just want to say two things. Firstly, Nakul, I really appreciate how much you appreciate Srila Prabhupada. Like, you've really, I really appreciate the way you appreciate Srila Prabhupada. Firstly, secondly,
yeah, like, bro. You know what I mean, right? Like, it's like that's why that story, when you talk about that guy, why I got so emotional, and even just recalling it, is because I understand what he says when he says Srila Prabhupada saved my life. It's like when I read the Gita and I was like, this is it. Am I there? Is my life saved? No, but did he throw the line out for me? Yes. And now, is it my own free will and choice of how how quick or where I pull? That's my choice. That's nobody else's choice to decide for me. I got the line. I received the mercy as I can. And now I, with my guru and God, get to go on my journey. And I want to do it because it's just fun doing it with a lot of people. But at the same time, it is nobody's business on how and where and how fast that goes for me. Sorry.
That's exactly what that was my next point. Is I was going to ask you this question, like, what pushback have you received from the conservatives or the authorities or whatever? And then I just kind of had this realization as I was hearing you. I was just like, you know what? It don't mean shit.
Yeah, they can't push back on me because it
It's
doesn't matter to me.
exactly.
You can only push back if it matters.
Exactly.
And what I'm saying is, and this, please do not misunderstand this to be a disrespect. Like we got, this is like in the politics world where they cut half the statement and they air that, right. So I know these things happen, but please do not make this to misunderstand my intention here to be disrespectful or to not say that it is important to have a structure of authority. That's why I said, but it's not everybody's business. What I'm saying is, like, when we're all hanging out at Sunday Temple stuff, my journey is not your business and your journey is not my business unless we decide to make it, because that's picking your association, right? So you have some that there are certain devotees that you are going to be more open with and more and conversational. Now, it's just my nature to not really like to be open with anybody. So for me, I'm happy to play the guy who's going to be like, look, these things are going on. And it's foolish to think that they're not going on. So it's also foolish to not address them.
It's just like
to have ways of dealing with these things.
Exactly. Where I was also coming from in saying like it doesn't mean shit. It's just like it's just so clear that like you're a guy who's got like a very real niche of people that you need to help, that really need your help.
I'm here for a certain section of society. And it's a dirty side. It's the untouchables. I said, and I'm happy here.
And what you're doing, who you are, everything about you is just so awesome in its authenticity that basically, it doesn't matter what anyone else says about it, because it's just like the fact that it's needed is just so self-evident,
That's it. It's a need. It's like, in a way, I'm an entrepreneur. That's all. You could just chalk it down to that too. Or you could just say he sees a need. I see a need, and I'm fulfilling that need. Right? But why I believe in it so much, why I'm willing, okay. So first of all, you asked about the pushback. First of all, there hasn't been much because nobody knows me. Who's gonna push back? All three devotees that know me, right? Like you guys are probably giving me the first chance to interact with ISKCON in a level like this.
I'm gonna tell.
Oh, thank you. Nobody knows me.
I'm gonna tell you how kind of like not integrated into ISKCON Nakul is. Nam Ross sent him a message appreciating his show, and Nakul was like, "Oh yeah, you do a podcast too, right?"
Hey, number one Hare Krishna podcast in the world.
So hard on that.
I went to my wife and said, "Hey, this guy messaged me because we might get another opportunity to talk." I was like, "That would be amazing, right?" You guys are the first people to give me an opportunity to speak. Not saying that I've been putting my hand up for an opportunity either, but there are ISKCON devotees who know what I do. Someone actually had brought me up for the mantra retreat. I attended the mantra retreat, and I plan on attending.
Were you there at the first one? I went to the first one.
No, just the one last year that was online.
Okay.
It was the first one I've been to. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic, both as an ISKCON devotee and I just thought there was such great information. I had a great time. It was a great weekend. I learned so much from the teachers there. And I can't wait to be an attendant again. I heard that my name was brought up as a possible speaker, and it was like, no, right, type of thing. He's not well known enough, I think, was the answer I got, right? So maybe but I think once people get to know me, they might be like, no. But I actually really hope that look, I'm open, obviously, and I want and desire to have this conversation more, and I'm happy to speak to anybody about it. And because everything I've said to you guys is what I have to say. Like, it really is not really, to me, it's really not a big deal. People have sex. Men have sex. Porn, masturbation is part of our world. Here are tools to deal with it and to get the benefits of this awesome practice called semen retention, which comes from the yogic tradition. Semen retention is in the Vedas. It's like, so it's not the way in which it's not the highest way. It's not the way Srila Prabhupada showed, but I'm also not like I'm not misleading anybody telling you it is. I'm not telling you this is a loophole. I found a loophole. No. If you would like to go back to Godhead, don't listen to me, right? Listen. But if you need help as a devotee, and again, I don't just talk to devotees. Most of my time is spent talking. I talk to everyday people. So that's another thing that devotees don't realize. They hear that I'm a devotee and they automatically stamp me as I am obviously talking. I talk nothing else.
Even like if we go to your website, you got like T-lock on and everything. Like
that is true. I would like to. Yeah. I would like to address. Sure. That's a good point, because I've actually in my branding, you'll see that I am moving more away from that to speak more openly, right? But I also at the same time, Krishna consciousness is a big part of my life. So I'm not going to hide it because it makes other devotees scared or nervous that I believe in Krishna consciousness.
Thinking about the non-devotees more than devotees. Like,
the non-devotees, they don't even know what it is. I mean, the guys make fun of me on YouTube. They're like, because I'll sometimes have the T-lock on some days, and they're like, "This guy's talking about semen retention. He's got semen on his forehead." And then I'll come back, and no one ever. And I always come back super respectful. Then I was like, I appreciate you sharing. This is actually an ancient symbol used by people, blah, blah, blah. And then nothing comes back, right? They're like, oh, my bad, right? They don't know. Like most of the guys I talk to, they don't know. They hear Nakula Das and they don't think anything other than that's just my name. Right. And they're like, and they don't care because they're talking to me about their problems, not my Krishna consciousness journey. Like people aren't inquiring to me about that because they're inquiring to me about their sexual problems.
I'm just
only devotees inquire to me, and the devotees who inquire, because I get a lot of messages. I say a lot. In the large scheme, nobody knows me in ISKCON, right? This is you guys are my first exposure to a larger ISKCON community outside of the 20 devotees that I know, here, right? So in that sense, when I'm speaking to people, again, I'm not speaking to devotees, so I speak very raw. I use language that you're going to hear in what I'll call streets or whatever, right? I'm going to use language that I know and that I'm going to relate to. When ISKCON devotees specifically, or devotees reach out to me, because I've had devotees from non-ISKCON also reach out to me, right? But when devotees reach out to me, one, I can tell right away because they'll say Hare Krishna or Hare Bo. The way they address me will be very different, right? And then, you know what 90% of the questions that ISKCON devotees ask me is how they can rectify their guilty feeling for having sexual urges and thoughts. And sometimes honestly, I'm saddened sometimes by the questions I receive, which is questions like this. Hare Krishna Nakul, thank you so much for what you're doing. How do I get rid of sexual urges? Because
I get questions like that all the time too.
And I'm like, whoa. Like, first of all, you don't get rid of sexual urges. This is a natural part of who you are and your body. We don't get rid of sexual urges here. We don't suppress them. We transmute them. I will teach you how to retain them, how to recognize them, how to work with it. So here's like, okay, so one guy, a student, he says, every time he looks at a woman, like Lord Chaitanya said, I can't even see the carving of a wooden woman and without my mind being agitated. This was Lord Chaitanya saying this.
Sure.
Oh, so what? You right? You're okay. He says he can't see the carving of a woman without his mind being agitated. This is Lord Chaitanya, okay? So this devotee says to me, I see a beautiful woman, and it's like I can't get her out of my head. He's like, I become like obsessed with her because she's so beautiful or whatever, right? And so I tell the story of Srila Prabhupada. So I said there was Srila Prabhupada was, and I don't know where he was, and I might butcher a little bit the details, but the principle you'll understand. Srila Prabhupada was somewhere, and there were some of devotees with him. and there was a beautiful girl, some women walking,
Yeah.
and Srila Prabhupada notices the devotees, noticing the women, right? Like there were the his brahmacharis were checking out the women. Srila Prabhupada, they noticed Srila Prabhupada noticing them, noticing the women, right? So you can imagine, right? Right? Srila Prabhupada, here was their reaction. Srila Prabhupada started to smile and laughed. And he said, if you think she's so beautiful, imagine what her creator looks like. That was his answer. So I just used the same answer. So someone says, I said, yes. And now just remember the source of her beauty. And right away, as soon as you remember this, see, the material consciousness touches. So you get the impression in your mind. And because we are generally sitting in material consciousness, we think, wow, I now want to enjoy that beauty, that I covet it. I want it. I want to enjoy it. Soon as you remember Srila Prabhupada's words and you hear, now remember the source of that beauty as devotees. This only works for devotees. This does not work for non-devotees because they have no other reference point, right? But as soon as you say to a devotee that's done a little bit of bhakti, you say, now remember the source of that beauty. Right away, who do they remember? Krishna, right? Great. Now who are you thinking about? Krishna. Now you'll notice the energy. First of all, you'll notice your erection starts to decrease right away. This is an actual transmutation practice. So I'm not joking when I say you'll notice your erection, you will be turned on because you're in your lower center. You're in your animal centers. Now you have to remember Krishna. It's a higher center plane. Soon as you start remembering Krishna, what's the first thing that will happen? If you're really aware, you notice your erection decreases because now your energy is moved upwards. This is transmutation. For non-devotees, I teach them what's called the microcosmic orbit meditation, where we circulate the energy. The principle is the same.
A cool name to it. That's why I'm giggling.
Right? Yeah. Oh, yeah. And
so say that again.
Microcosmic orbit. This is from the Taoist language. This is the Taoist.
Microcosmic orbit.
Remember sexual kung fu? This is the language of sexual kung fu.
Sure.
The microcosmic orbit, which the yogis called the chakra system, the Taoists called the microcosmic orbit, which is the main energy channel. Like if you've ever studied acupuncture, it's the same acupuncture centers. So basically, this is the energetic channel that runs up the back of the spine to the crown of the head and down the bottom of the body and around, creating an energetic circuit. And this is tangible. You can feel it with these practices. What ends up happening is as you retain your semen, especially if you're sexually active, actually, because in sexual activity, your testosterone is spiked because your body thinks you're going to ejaculate and then you don't. What it ends up doing is it ends up retraining the practice. So you actually get like a higher dosage, let's say, right? So what ends up happening is when the semen is retained, the body refines this semen because now it has like an excess. So you start to live in excessive energy. So it refines it like water into gas, right? So it refines it into gas and begins to flow upwards in your body. The main channel it's going to flow through is the chakra system or the microcosmic orbit. Through meditation and breath work, there's a particular breath called reverse breathing where you breathe inwards and up. So if you look at my belly, right, you go, you do that movement with a perineum, like a pelvic floor, like a Kegel, like if you have to pee, you do that movement with a Kegel and run your mind from your testicle up to the top of your head. And you do that enough, you'll start to feel like a water sensation or a tingling start to travel up your spine. And as you travel up you feel this tingling traveling up your spine, you start to circulate this tingling. And now one thing you'll notice is your erection is gone. Boom. Right? Why? Because you are actually outside of your body, physical body. You're now into your subtle energetic body. And you're circling energy. So now you're interacting in an energetic frequency or an energetic consciousness. This is what people will now call tantra. This is now what people will have sex for hours and never ejaculate because they're actually the only thing that's keeping them erect is the fact that their partner's with them. As soon as their partner leaves, though, because their consciousness is circling energy throughout their body. Now, once you do this enough, this is where you have non-ejaculatory orgasm. And this is where guys start to recognize that their energy body is better than their physical body. When you develop the practice enough, you develop enough ojas, enough aura, which is going to spike your energy, right? You're just going to be like, what? Let's go live life in your way. That's the way it comes out in me. If you're not like me, it's just going to come out in you, but you're definitely going to notice clarity, brain fog, gone. Right, all your cells are being nourished, your brain is being nourished, all the higher with that semen flowing upwards. Once you feel that tingling reach the crown of your head, you'll notice this ecstasy feeling start to just burst throughout you. What happens for me personally, everybody's a bit different, but it travels up my spine and reaches the center of my back. Now, in sexual activity, orgasm and ejaculation are different things that happen simultaneously. I'll say it again. Orgasm and ejaculation are different things that happen simultaneously. What we do in sexual alchemy is we separate the two completely. Orgasm is a pulsation of built up energy. So if you think about sexually, you're doing sexual activity and you're building up that energy. You're building up to orgasm, right? When that energy has built up enough, it will pulsate. For most men, when that pulsation happens, that's what they call orgasm. That energy then pushes through, then outwards through your penis, having an ejaculation. For a sexual alchemist, when that energy pulsates, it travels up your spine and you feel it all through your body as a full-body orgasm, non-ejaculatory orgasm. Whew.
What?
You feel satisfied because you got an orgasm, but you haven't lost your physical semen. And in that sense, you're like, whoa, you can do it again if you'd like. Or, as I mentioned in the last part, or now is the time at 3 o'clock in the morning to bust out 20 blogs because you're like, and you get in one day's work done what someone else will do in a week. And now you start to see the material benefits. So now the spiritual practitioner, they will not go down that road. The Hare Krishna devotee that's going for renunciation stuff will not engage in sexual activities in that way like a brahmachari, but they can still use the practices of transmuting that energy. So I have a student, non-devotee, right? I say, okay, when you see a woman and you get aroused, he said, yes. He's like, I don't want to be aroused. I don't like, now is not the time to be aroused, right? Like he's talking about like we all know. Okay, let's get honest, right? We all have the weirdest thoughts at the weirdest times, right? You're like, I really should not be thinking about this at this moment, right? Right now, but here it is. So you have to deal with it. You have to say, that's in me. I have to deal with it. You cannot just ignore it, right? Well, I guess you can, but right, I don't recommend it. So here's what I teach. So I said, okay, as soon as you become aware that you're aroused, you'll notice that the tingling sensation that you feel, which you have to really notice and practice, you'll notice that tingling sensation is all in your testicles. It's all in your genitals. It is in your sexual organs. So therefore, you are consciously viewing, your consciousness is material. It's sexual, right? It's like, okay, a pen like that. So I said, so you'll notice it. Soon as you notice it, Kegels right away. Start using your pelvic floor to pump that. And then you'll start noticing that the tingling starts to disperse. And right away, your mind and your fantasy world that you're creating in your head is starting to dismantle because your attention is now going towards a transmutative practice. So
Go ahead. What if you can't look away because she's so beautiful?
Well, I mean, if you're really at a stage where you can't enjoy it, just remember that the source of that beauty. Right? Yeah. Just remember the source of that beauty, right? I've been having sex and been thinking of Krishna, right? I've had sex where I'm thinking of Krishna.
I was just gonna chime in. It wasn't.
I'm not telling you that's the purest form of bhakti.
Yeah, right. It wasn't gonna be a well-timed joke, but I was gonna say, like, Hiranyakashipu is described that when he was having sex with his wife, he was so frustrated because Narada Muni and Angita Rishi had come in bird form, and they kept saying Narayana around him while he was trying to meditate. So he was so frustrated. He went home to like let off some steam
Yeah,
with his wife, but he couldn't get Narayana out of his head. And so for this reason, he gave birth to Prahlad Maharaj.
He gave
We've
birth to
heard
Prahlad 'cause
story
he was
like
in Krishna conscious. He was in Krishna consciousness while he had sex. That's so funny. I didn't know that story. Thank you. That's amazing.
I didn't know that story either.
You've not heard this one? It might be coming in
Nah.
Srimad Purana. I've heard a few devotees mention the story, so I haven't read it
Srimad
myself.
Purana is being translated?
It has been translated. I don't know about accuracy of translation. It hasn't been translated by our devotees, but it has been. I've seen it in Ras Bihari Lal.
Okay.
I've seen Puranas there.
Yeah, so you can bring your consciousness in there. You bring your awareness there, and now again, your love making becomes you'll see it changes the quality. Women, you know who? I can't tell you how many women message. I literally had the last free webinar I had. Right, I had a couple girls sign up, and they're like, "Can we attend?" And I'm like, "Well, they're you can listen in and such, but I work with guys, right?" But I can't tell you how many women appreciate this work because the quality of lovemaking, the quality of relationship they have begins to become so loving. There's an exchange. There's a friendship that's born. My wife will tell you, like my wife, like we're thinking about starting a podcast and stuff. Our time right now is limited because we're getting our business going and such. Right. But we want to launch a podcast together talking about all of this as a couple. Right? Yeah. Because our bedroom experience together.
We're totally gonna have you on our show. You're gonna come. You're gonna come. We're gonna do it.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because when you start to hear the feminine perspective of the work, of this work, you really start to understand it more. You actually understand why this is so important. Because how many women do not feel the reality is many women are only engaging in sexual activity with their husbands out of obligation.
I know.
Right? And no attraction there at all. Because the men themselves are actually so in their feminine energy unknowingly. They want their woman to be the pursuer, and that's all porn and modern. Like it's like that's a whole other thing that we could dive down of the psychology of sexuality in the modern world.
Right.
But what it's doing is causing a lot of disconnection in the bedroom and also outside the bedroom. And here is just a psychological principle that a man's performance within the bedroom affects his performance outside the bedroom, meaning his sexual energy, our ability as men to control ourselves, to be disciplined, to get things done, to provide, to protect, to do those very instinctual manly things has a huge impact unconsciously on our self-esteem.
Yeah, sure.
Right? And this part is when I really started getting interested in this work to recognize that, and this is what I've had devotees like come to me and they're scared of. I've had one devotee avoiding marriage because he's so nervous about his performance in the bedroom. Like erectile dysfunction. This is a crush to a man's world. Right. A man who, and especially a non-devotee, as devotees, we can kind of we may even be like, well, maybe it's a blessing. It's Krishna's mercy, right? Non-devotees ain't seeing it that way. Okay. This is crushing their world, right? I mean, we have a little like a little bit of framework we can work with and be like, well, maybe Krishna's helping me out.
Krishna's saving me.
But even that's not true for most devotees.
Right.
Like I say, the devotees that have reached out to me, that's not true for them. They don't feel that way at all. And it is having huge impact in their lives and in their bhakti as well, in their process, because they're very much occupied about what this. Men with premature ejaculation, erectile dysfunction, huge psychological self-confidence issues comes out. Men with
I was gonna say, don't give all the juice here because then no one's gonna come in the seminar.
Oh, trust me. Yeah, the seminar.
We got all the juice on the Rise podcast.
The seminar. Okay, when I showed you the little breathing exercise and the seminar is going to be more of that. What you're going to learn in the seminar are practices. We're going to start off with something called tumo breath. We're going to just like blast you out of your body with your breath, and then we're going to do some Kegels. We're going to do some microcosmic orbitations so that you could start to get a tangible feeling of what does it feel like when my sexual energy, when I have lots of sexual energy, but yet I'm not controlled by it. I'm using it consciously. It feels different, and you're operating at a different level of existence. It says, and I can't remember where I read this. What do you call like the plane of the demigods? Satyaloka.
Swarga.
Swarga. Yeah.
Okay. It is. I read, and I'm trying to remember. I can't remember exactly where I read it, but it says anyone who could practice semen retention, even with doing nothing, will reach that level of existence, because it's a level of mastery that just up levels your consciousness. Are you Krishna conscious? No. Are you Srila Prabhupada? No. Right? But are you actually operating at a higher level of awareness? Yeah, you bet you are, and you'll notice it tangibly. You will have no doubt in your mind, especially if you've been ejaculating. Like, you got to think like, okay, myself, I discovered masturbation at like 9 or 10 years old, right? And like I mentioned this in the last podcast, I believe, and it's been like a free for all, for like 15, 20 years, right? With no absolutely zero like discussion or feeling guilty about it or nothing, because it's just life. Only when I came to spiritual knowledge I was like, oh, and then started clicking the dots of like, oh man, like, maybe that's why I'm like struggling financially. I actually don't even have enough energy in me and enough drive and force in me to go for that promotion, to put myself, to charge more money, to have value, to know what I don't have enough energy. Right now, men in the world are running from 300 to 450 in testosterone. The average man 100 years ago was running at 800 to 1200. We literally are less manly in this world, but that all can be reversed by semen retention. And there's tons of scientific data to show that. And I'm saying Western scientific data for those who need that. Sastra already told you that this is, that this is going to do it. So if you're a devotee and you believe Sastra, then you don't need to convince. But if you're like me, who's like a wretched soul, you need to, I'm like, yeah, but still give me the Western science. Tell me some, I need a PhD to tell me this. Oh, there's tons of them, and there's tons of studies to show this, right? So through this practice, you will notice your motivation, clarity, everything will skyrocket, because it's actually going to evolve you. It's why also Srila Prabhupada, I believe it's my theory of why Srila Prabhupada said that if someone wastes too much of their seminal fluid, they can't understand. They don't have enough brain development yet. We have wasted a lot of our brain development foolishly, because if you actually look at a sperm, to the head of the sperm, it's all attached. Well, that develops, right? That's what multiplies and develops. That same archetype of the sperm develops as us. So the bottom of our spine to our head is like, if I'm like, picture me as one giant sperm. The bottom of my spine to my head is me when I was a sperm. I'm still that same thing, but I've just manifested out a body, right? But that initial connection from lower spine to the crown of the head must be maintained. In our current society, that becomes disconnected, right? A lot of people don't know the Star of David. So in the Jewish tradition, the Star of David is a downward triangle with an upward triangle, symbolizing the mergence of material and spiritual realities. And that the human life is in the center. It's the bridge between the spiritual and the material. So that's the Star of David. That's how they interact. And that's why in the Jewish tradition, so they don't go total celibacy, right? But they restrict it. And that's why in the very Orthodox Jewish homes, Friday night is sex night in the very Orthodox Jewish homes. It's no masturbation, no nothing. So you have all that energy to work in family life and career and all that through the day. And at night, you fulfill your, manly duties and desires and such with your wife. And that's their practice. So if you start looking at traditions outside of the Hare Krishna tradition, which is something I do as the spiritual explorer identity, and I still do and very open to, you'll see that the sex principle is taught everywhere. with its own flavor, variations, you know, catered to the culture, the people, the time, right? But you see the principle is there. So Krishna consciousness, the Vedas is the highest principles. It all comes from there. So of course it holds the highest standard and highest practice.
Well, it's also true because there are material portions of the Vedas, but
yes,
our devotees, we don't study those literatures. We don't have access to those literatures. So we don't have access to the information that may help us deal with the conventional life in a more skillful way. And so all we're left with is like the transcendental literatures, which gives us insight to how to deal with ourselves transcendentally. But when it comes to the conventional engagement, we're quite confused about it. So you need to have podcasts about it, or go to the YouTube
That's right.
videos, or go to the manosphere about it, and so on.
That's right. There's what was I gonna say? There's oh, it slipped my mind. Anyways, but what you're saying is right. There's not the Kama Sutra. That's it. The Kama Sutra, right, is a really interesting book, because most people hear the Kama Sutra and automatically they think of the sex positions.
The positions. Portion.
But that's only a small portion of the Kama Sutra, right? A lot of people don't realize that actually Vyasa, who wrote the Kama Sutra, included many, many other things. I may be saying that name wrong. Let me. It was
a different author.
Let me not do names. The writer of bad idea for me to do the names. The writer of the Kama Sutra included a lot of others. So I read the Kama Sutra and other things. You know, one of the biggest principles of Kama Sutra: sex comes after everything else. So the Kama Sutra was written for the people of the day, because this renunciate said, well, these guys aren't like, they're not going to do renunciation. They're not even equipped for it. It would actually be torture to tell them to renunciate. And that's the same thing that the Taoist monks, all of the techniques I teach from sexual kung fu from the Taoist side, were all originate from celibate monks, who then gave these teachings and created these teachings for men who weren't monks. That's what they're for, right? And so one of the things that the author of the Kama Sutra said is that sex is a high pleasure. He compared it to the pleasure of the demigods, and this very high level of pleasure. And it can be enjoyed, but only after all other duties are maintained and taken care of. So in his philosophy, it was very much for the everyday guy who was like, okay, I'm not interested in being a monk and such, and I'm going to live my life as I'm going to live it, but I do want some regulation. I understand the benefit of some spiritual life, of discipline, of focus. And so he gave that. And that's one of the highest principles of the Kama Sutra. In the Western world, the Kama Sutra has been whittled down to sex positions. I think that's just a small part of the Kama Sutra.
Yeah, thanks to our pornified world, we just get to the so-called essence.
Yeah, let's just get to the good stuff, right?
Right, the good stuff.
And it's like, no, actually, the Kama Sutra is full of good stuff outside of that chapter, right? And that's the part that is the other aspects of sexuality that I'd like to bring out more. My mission is to bring it out to men. I'm bringing this out to men all over the world, and if that includes ISKCON devotee men, man, that would be like a dream come true for me to be able to work with ISKCON devotee men. But I knew getting into this, ISKCON as an institution may not be exactly on board with this.
That's okay, but ISKCON as its members, there are plenty of members who are into this, or who at least recognize the need for something like this. Right. And we're starting to congregate on a Discord page called the Guild of the Arisen. to take the opportunity to plug that in there right now.
Totally.
Actually, since our last episode, we've been getting a lot more activity of men just joining this Discord page. And we hope to build the community, maybe of ISKCON devotees in the beginning, which would be great. And also in the future to gather and be able to have conversations with one another about these sorts of sensitive subject matters. We're going to be hosting our first event on our Discord page with Nakula. It's a Sex Mastery Workshop 101. We've already heard a little bit from you. What we're going to get a little bit of there, more like a workshop of techniques that one could apply to help them transmute their sexual energies so it doesn't end up destroying their life. I'm going to be there. I know a lot of friends reached out to me immediately when they heard that last week saying, I want to sign up. How do I sign up? All you have to do is go and join our Discord page, Guild of the Arisen. Yes, you should be a man. One of the prerequisites, I'm going to put this out on the blurb on the guild, is that you have to have your video on when you're participating in the workshop. Because only reason is that we know that people are actually participating in the workshop. And also because, not that this isn't important for ladies to hear, as you were mentioning, it's interesting to get that perspective. But in order for there to be the most amount of honest discussion and intimacy, there amongst the men, no ladies can be there. That's just the way that works. Don't tell me why it's like that. It's just a sort of nature thing. If there's even one lady in the event, men will not open up. They will not say shit because it's just,
you know what?
It's like a nature thing.
I'll tell you from personal experience, that's true.
I know it's true. I've seen it too many times over my years.
It is so true. And this is also the acknowledgement that the modern world is confusing people with, which says that we're all the same.
Right.
We're not. Men, we need to have men time, guy time, where we can chat and interact, just like women need that as well for theirs, and then time together as you know, as man, women together. Yeah. And I think it's important to acknowledge that's it's so true what you're saying. Anyway,
just like you have to have your camera on. Ladies, if you're interested in some of this material, which I've been getting messages from ladies, they've really been appreciating our podcast in general. And I've got a lot of messages about your particular episode last week. Just the openness of the conversation amongst men has been very encouraging for women also. We might have a sort of sector of our page that's like more general for anyone to participate in. But right now, the guild is mainly to help men. We're trying to help each other.
Yeah, because basically, if we don't help each other, like it's like you guys are gonna not, you know, we're doing this so that we can be better for you ultimately.
Better for ourselves women first, and then being better, and then better for our families and our world around us. You know. Yeah. So that was just a really easy place to plug in for the Discord page.
No, that's perfect. Thank you. And I really, again, I appreciate it. This is the first platform that ISKCON devotees have given me. You were talking about. Can you say his name again? Again, I'm the other podcast host.
Namras.
Yeah, because I was mentioning, because I said to my wife after he messaged me, I said, "Oh, this guy's got a podcast," and then I went onto the page, right, and I liked the page and such, and I was like, "Oh, look, it's the #1 the Hare Krishna podcast in the world too." I was like, "Imagine we got on that." So this is me saying I really would love the opportunity.
He started that kind of as a joke, but then I kind of like caught, and because it's like the only podcast for a couple of years on Hare Krishna. But Namras, he's like the cool kid that everyone loves all over the world. So it gets a lot of attention. Even his last few episodes he put out, the subject matter was a little bit sensitive because it was surrounding the flu, as you called it, and more unpopular positions on that narrative. And so much was the case that he had the GBC, the governing body commission of the institution, reaching out to him to make sure that certain things were like clear before he like went on public. That's how much influence this show has.
See, I'll never do that. I'm just putting that out there right now. Like nobody will tell me.
Well, no one could tell him.
No, I know, and I know that. I know, like, yeah.
But I was just saying that the level of his just because he just invites
that's how much influence he has, right?
That people could recognize. And I think this is where, and this is a totally different conversation. But you know, what is ISKCON? It's a big question at this moment, because before it was very much tied to like the building itself and the institution. But now, because of everything shifting to a digital universe, ISKCON is becoming more or less its members, and who are, you know, followers of Srila Prabhupada and followers of gurus who may be part of the institution. So it's becoming like a little bit more broad. Let's say the definition is becoming more broadened. Anyway, it'd be great to see you on his podcast also.
Definitely. Gotta happen.
He reaches a much wider audience of devotees than ours is a little bit more niche.
This has been
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I'm just in ecstasy, just really just hearing you, just experiencing your authenticity now. Cool, it's like it's so refreshing. And I feel like I think I can speak for Jaya as well to say that I'm so honored and so like giddy at the fact that we get to host you first, because like basically what I realized is that, like, dude, you're like undiscovered, like people don't really know about you. So it's like we get to kind of in one sense introduce you to our broader society, and that's really just such an honor. And yeah, man, like I just bro, like I just love what you do, and I can't wait to see you grow from strength to strength and to help so many men out there. I certainly am so enthusiastic to learn from you, and yeah, man, it's just like all glories to your service, bro.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. It's really touching. Everybody. I don't. Again, I'm clearly like. It really strokes my ego, and I appreciate it, right? Like, and I think it's okay. Like sometimes, I know. Again, see, I tend to present the opposite side. Like I found it like in ISKCON, nobody. When you say hey, thank you, everyone's like no, 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 right? It's like no, 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 no. But I actually want to just say I accept it and I appreciate when I get feedback like that, because it gives me strength. Because I'll tell you, when I first started speaking like this and talking openly about sexuality, I was so nervous, right? I was like, oh, they're going to eat me alive. And I had a few people eat me alive online, right? Like type of thing, like, how could you be doing this? And blah, blah, blah. I had a guy write me an email telling me I should be kicked out and blah, blah, blah of ISKCON and everything, right?
Thank you.
Blah, blah, blah. And so I was like, okay, whatever, I'm just going to keep doing my thing. I've decided I'm doing this, and this is a good thing. This helps men. It's not for everyone, and I already know it'll be misunderstood, so I have to see it coming. But it helps me develop thick skin, also getting criticism too. It's a good thing, to be okay with criticism, because it makes you stronger in yourself. And so anyways, I appreciate the feedback, and I'm saying that because for me, I really want to help the devotees, of course, right? And it really helped me. But unless devotees get behind it, I'm going to take it to the world, right? But if less devotees get behind it, specifically for ISKCON devotees, then it won't have the impact that it possibly could. And not only that, it's like if guys learn these techniques, they can then teach. I learned these techniques. They're not like a ton of techniques. There's in my overall course that I teach, it's 27 training videos, right? It's like very specific exercises and techniques that allow you to do this. It's not like you have to do this for, become this sexual alchemist student. You're not, it's just it's a program that will teach you a very specific skill. And I think that if you see, my prediction is if you see devotees taking to this, you'll notice that service contribution goes up, because you'll notice that your devotees will start coming with more vigor. If your male devotees will start coming with more vigor, more energy, more creativity. If we want a strong society is built of strong individuals. And so in my opinion, let's work at the individual level. Let's work right with people and say, what's the challenges you're having? Oh, okay, there's sexual. Look at the Catholic Church. I know myself and Jaina, we talked a little bit about this kind of like, look how the Christians, they're way ahead of the game on this subject, right? Way ahead of the game. Like they are openly speaking about sexual problems, pornography. Pastors are coming out. Terry Crews, I don't know if you know Terry Crews, big actor, really strong. He's publicly speaking about his porn addiction, right? And how no fat movement helped him. Like men's lives are changing all around the world. And I'm sorry, but I just cannot see how this is not a good thing. The only reason it's not a good thing is because it's not at the standard in which the devotee community holds themselves. But why not have a bridge? Why not help devotees get there? And why not allow devotees to make their own choice? This gives them a choice. It's like there's brahmachari, there's the material world.
Dude, yeah.
Here's an in-between step. It's not brahmachari, but it's not fully material either.
Yeah.
There is a dovetail of spirituality and growth that happens by nature's design.
Yeah.
Mm.
I basically feel like unless I do this work and like learn these techniques and get this kind of experience, like I'm not gonna be able to be a real devotee that's like genuinely interested in Shuddha Bhakti, you know?
It's
Like I
difficult
feel
when your sexual urges are
dude,
overtaking,
yeah, that's
right?
the thing, you know. I am dealing with so many of these struggles, and it's just kind of like it's too distracting, it's too overwhelming. It's just kind of you got to do something with it, man. Otherwise, like, what sustainable? What sort of
It's all
level of
for show
sustain?
then, then it becomes it's cool. I mean, we can all wear a dhoti and we can all like, put nice tilak on and, like, oh, what's his name? Gora something, Gora Gopal. He's a big motivational speaker
Oh
in
yeah,
our
yeah.
movement, right? He's his tilak's always perfect. Now, my mind's always like smudged on my head. I was like,
All right,
man,
gentlemen, y'all out there, y'all hearing this? I know there are a lot of guys who hear this podcast, like in secret or in quiet. They really appreciate it. I even met a few of them during Rath Yatra time here in New York, who came up to me and was like, "Listen, I'm listening to that podcast. I like binge watched all the episodes, and it was like very sweet and encouraging to see." So y'all, those of us who are out there who could use a little bit of this support from these techniques in this community, y'all know y'all out there, and we want to more than like help you. We're trying to help each other,
Yeah.
and we're trying to build a little community around not just the sexual parts, but that's obviously going to be a big part because that is the big and hard issue, as I said earlier. That's always going to be there, And so our Discord page is there, Guild of the Arisen. Join it. We'll be making announcements for the Sex Mastery workshop for sure. Nakoji, it's really been an honor to have you. Like I said, the biggest feedback that I was getting about our episode last week, in the sense that I'm going to probably hear from this episode, is that I don't know if I agree with everything that he's saying, but this guy is I just feel like what I see is what I get. And that's so endearing.
That's also for sure.
That I'm a fan. Like I got that message at least from 3 or 4 people last week. I'm a fan just because of that one quality.
I actually feel like you've come and you've set like a whole other benchmark of like authenticity and real talk on this show. And it actually, in future, if people are not living up to like authentic expression, I'm gonna hold their ass accountable.
Ask them tough questions. Ask them the questions. I got this advice from a Hollywood producer who said to me when I used to have a podcast where I would interview people, and he was like, yeah, it's all right. It's all right. He's like, but you don't ask them tough enough questions. He said, the tougher the questions you ask them, the better the conversation and the better they'll be.
Yeah.
Right? What I really loved about you guys and this opportunity, and thank you so much for, again, everything, is that I got to speak about Krishna consciousness and sexuality together, which is generally like 2 conversations I'm engaged in.
Right.
But separately, even though in my immediate circle in my household, it's a one. There's no difference. But when I go outside of my circle, right, it becomes a very like, oh, I'm with my Krishna friends, and so we're going to talk about Krishna. And now I'm with this, and now we're going to talk about this. And so I love that the worlds have blended. And I think it's just fantastic what you guys are doing, which is, I think you guys are catering to the new generation of devotees, which is going to look and feel very different to the first, second, and third generations. The 4th, 5th, 6th, man, it's going to look very different.
No,
very
absolutely.
Different.
Yeah.
So thank you.
One final thing that I just need to mention is we're conducting some ongoing research on sexual values in our broader society of devotees. Like, how do you feel about the thing, we ask very direct questions. We really cover the basis. And it's really about like making sure that there's no... Anyway, we don't like, it's just like Danya. By the way, last week I kind of forgot to mention. I was like just in the flow of it and whatever. Danya Rico like absolutely incredible individual. She's been on our show. She's a specialist family and couples counselor, very much involved in our thing. Kumari Saki, who really came up with pretty much the whole array of questions. Her husband Brajananda, and then Jai and myself. We're basically the team, and yeah, we really just want to give the space to just express really where you're at, and we want to use that. It's completely anonymous. Don't worry about being exposed on any level. We just want to use that information to have like a very informed, extended conversation in this realm. So please help us out. I'm posting that in the comments right now, and just support us in that way. Thank you so much, everyone. If you want to give any feedback, voice any opinions, whatever, you can email us ariseheroicman@gmail.com. We're also on Instagram @ariseheroicman. Knuckles on Instagram @knuckledas. I'm there @Karuna Avatar. Jai is Urban Sage Deliberates. And yeah, man. Knuckle G, we'll see you on Saturday. Everyone, just another reminder, the Discord page is in the comments. Please join our Discord community. We're going to have like an epic sexual mastery workshop presented by Knuckle on Saturday. Jai, what time are we doing it? It's at noon EST, right?
When we first fixed up the time, it was at our old time, meeting time. So it was like around 9:30. Right? Yeah. That's the time that we have arranged, right? 9:30.
Yeah. For me on Saturday, 9:30 is perfect.
Right.
So that's Eastern Standard Time, 9:30 Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah, 9:30 Eastern Standard Time.
Cool. So that may make it a little difficult for people in the Pacific time zone to come, but I mean, if it's important enough to you, just come. Like that's the time it's going to happen. And
is there a recording? Or is it just those who are live?
I'm not sure if we can record it on Discord.
You can't record it on Discord unless you have a recording thing on your computer. So I might record it, but it will definitely be saved on my computer and only be given out to selected persons.
Yeah, because that's also the other thing is like we can't really record it because then the whole kind of male like synergy, confidentiality vibe is compromised. So yeah, if you want to get in on the juice, you got to be there. That's basically the story. Okay, y'all. Much love, Hare Krishna, Knuckle G. Stay on for a sec. I'm just gonna end the broadcast. Jai.